Hey, I'm Michael Trenz. Entrepreneur in Action is where we dive into the lives of entrepreneurs who master the 4 F's: finance, fitness, family, and fun. Our mission: help you thrive in business and life. Today's guest is Ryan Wardell, a tech entrepreneur, growth marketer, and startup mentor, and the founder of Startup SAAS, a mastermind community for SaaS founders looking to grow their marketing and get more customers. I think you're going to love it. Welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. Today's guest is Ryan Wardell. Tell me about Startup SAAS.
In a nutshell, if you're based outside of Silicon Valley and you're building a SaaS business, there's not much in terms of ecosystem or support networks that you've got in place, especially if you're kind of at that stage where it's sort of, $10,000 a month to, I suppose $5 million a year. There's quite a big gap in there. But once you get above sort of $5 million a year, it doesn't matter whether you're venture backed or bootstrapped. You've got the resources to be able to figure things out on your own. But getting to that point on your own, especially if you're not in the Valley or especially if you haven't raised any VC, is a challenge. Sometimes people will go and hire a business coach, or they'll have an advisory board or a network of mentors and stuff that they can turn to. But for a lot of people, the best way to learn is to surround yourself with other people who are 1 or 2 steps ahead of where you are. So the whole reason we exist is to connect SaaS founders up with people who are 1 or 2 steps ahead of where you are right now, so you can learn from them. And because it's a private community, the advantage we have over, say, a Facebook group or a public forum or anything like that is that people will be a bit more honest and a bit more open about some of the mistakes that they made, or sharing things that they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing if a competitor was listening. For example, we don't allow competitors in. So we've had people share, hey, I sent this email out to my customers to change my pricing and I stuffed it up. Here's the email I sent out. Don't make the same mistake, guys. And you just don't get opportunities to learn things like that from other SaaS founders easily in any other sort of method. So when we looked around at the space, so I mean, I can get into the story maybe in a little bit, but I was running a marketing agency in London with a mate of mine. And like every service business owner on the planet, we wanted to get out of service business because you're on this roller coaster up and down of, we've got plenty of client work on, but we've got no time. So we've just got to do all the work. And then you finish the project work and then you're like, oh God, we've got to scramble around to get more customers now. So you're constantly up and down. Feel like you can't take any time off, all that kind of stuff. So we wanted to start a SaaS business. And the problem is that both my business partner and I were marketers. We knew that side of things really well, but we didn't understand the technical side of things or how SaaS worked from a product perspective. We knew it from a marketing perspective. There's a few interesting quirks about SaaS as a business model too that make it really interesting. But so we wanted to build a SaaS business and we wanted to learn from people who had already run successful SaaS businesses. So for some reason, we thought, why don't we set up a community for these people? Or, MVP it. Let's meet up for breakfast once a week with a few people locally and talk about business stuff. So we did that, but we were expecting it was going to be a whole bunch of kids. Now I'm 36. I'm one of the youngest people in the group. We thought we'd be these wise old men in our 30s, talking to these kids straight out of college and talking to them, giving them all this amazing startup and marketing advice. The exact opposite happened. So most of the people in the community now are sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They've built businesses before. They've sold businesses before. And the reason they're a part of that community is because they understand the value of having other smart founders at your fingertips that you can just hit up for advice like that. They don't go to the networking events, the startup networking events. I had a mentor who calls it startup tourism. When you get kids straight out of university, they go along, they drink lots of beer, they play lots of ping pong, they don't get much actual work done. And 6 months later, they spend all their cash and they go and get a job somewhere. Whereas the people that we wanted to meet, they live out in the suburbs, they're married, they've got a few kids, they're, in some cases running really, really, really successful businesses doing tens of millions of dollars a year in revenue. But they'd be invisible otherwise. You wouldn't otherwise bump into them on the street just because they're working all the time, or they've, spending time with their family, or, going off traveling or doing things like that. So anyway, that is a long, convoluted way of saying Startup Source is a community for growth stage SaaS founders who want to learn from other people who are 1 or 2 steps ahead of where they are right now. And we sort of feel that nice niche between, there's lots of communities and support networks available for people that are just getting started and are still trying to find product market fit. We're kind of the next step beyond that, where you've got some product market fit, but you need to figure out how to grow it. And maybe you're probably not yet at a point where it makes sense for you to hire a business coach directly. And what you're looking for instead is to surround yourself with some other people who, play at your level that you can learn from, but in an affordable way. So that's where we are.
Yeah. So some people, right, as you mentioned, right, some people really want like that one-on-one attention, which they might get from like hiring a coach, where they might have a weekly session. And then some people might feel that they could grow a lot more by being in a field of other like-minded entrepreneurs who have similar goals, but not in the exact same line of business. right? So they're not, as you said, they're not competing, but they might really feel that value and that sense of belonging as well. They might get a little more out of it than just even, what they get from the business, because it could be lonely. If you might be a solopreneur running a SaaS startup and you're like, nobody understands me. Where are my people? Right. And you're providing that. You're providing place. These are your people. And specifically, it's not your group. What I'm hearing is it's not for brand new founders necessarily who are trying to find that first sale, trying to get their first couple of customers and that product market fit from the start stage. But they've progressed a bit, and this is a income stream for them that's maybe dependable, right? As far as dependable can be, right? With running your own business. And they really feel like, hey, this is, I don't have a job. This is my thing that I do, and I'm ready to grow that. And so tell me, like, what are some of the most common ways that you can help people grow once they come to you, right? Say somebody has just signed up for Starter Sauce, and like, where is that person at? And like, what are some of the first levers they might be looking to pull to get their growth going?
So it depends on the starting point, and this is one of the things. We focus on SaaS, so everyone has that in common, but the stage that people are at changes. There's quite a big gap there. For example, we've got one guy in the group who's doing like $50 million a year in revenue. The problems that he encounters are very different to someone who's just at that minimum threshold to join, which is $5,000 a month. That's sort of the level where, it's a bit more than a hobby, but it's not quite a business yet. So that's the point where, you meet the minimum requirements to join the community, and we can help you accelerate from there. So we do a couple of things to help them. The first thing that we do is I do a one-on-one call with new members when they join the group. That's not coaching per se. I can do that. That's sort of something that happens on the side, but quite often people just need to be pointed in the right direction. Often when you're building a business, you get overwhelmed with advice. Should I be doing SEO? Should I be writing all these blog posts all the time? Should I be doing Google ads? What about Facebook? How about email marketing? Is that a thing? Should I be going to trade shows? Should I be knocking on doors and meeting people face to face? Like, what do I do to get customers? Because I can't do everything. There's only 24 hours in a day, and often it's just me or just me and my co-founder. How do we grow this thing in an intelligent way? And sometimes it's useful to have an outside perspective on that, because I used to run a marketing consultancy for years and years and years. I've been a mentor at a bunch of startup accelerators. I've seen a lot of different businesses succeed, and I've seen a few fail. And I kind of, it's easy for me to say, okay, this is not the right fit for your business. Given the resources you've got, the time you've got, the skills that you've got, don't do this thing. Focus on this other thing over here. So that at least points people in the right direction. Then what we do is we organize mastermind calls. So we match people up with 4 or 5 other founders, not just in terms of the stage you're at in terms of revenue. What we try and do is match people up based on the problem space that you're tackling or the marketing channels that you're pursuing. So for example, if you're selling to enterprise, it probably makes sense for you to get on a regular call with other people that are also selling to enterprise. If you're some guy who's selling to small businesses, you're probably not going to learn as much from being a part of that group. So we match people up based on that. But also, let's say SEO is a major channel for you. You might want to be in a group with other people that are doing SEO, so you can swap kind of insider tactics on that. If you're doing direct sales, maybe being surrounded by people who are doing lots of SEO isn't that relevant to you, at least right now. Maybe you might learn some stuff if you want to get into that. But so it's not an exact science, but we do try. We send out a form, we ask people to give us some information, and we match them up, as best we can based on what problem they're tackling, how they're tackling it in terms of marketing channel, and a few other bits and pieces as well. Time zone being one. You run a global group with people all over the world. It's hard to commit to a call if it's at 2:00 in the morning. So it's not an exact science, but we generally do pretty well out of it. And attendance is generally pretty high. We try and strike a balance between getting to know the people in your mastermind group, because you just get a surface level elevator pitch, and it's not really that useful. The value comes from getting to know the other members, understanding their business, how they think, what they're good at, what's this experience you had. Oh yeah, before I was doing this business, I was doing this other thing. Do you want an intro to someone there? Those sorts of things kind of come a bit more naturally when you actually get talking to people, as opposed to just everyone pitching their business to each other all the time. So we run a few mastermind cycles per year. So we're trying to strike that balance between getting to know people, but also getting an opportunity to bounce around and meet other people as well. Some people will come along and join a mastermind cycle for a bit. They'll go away. They'll have all these ideas, and they're like, right, I just need to go and execute for the next 6 months, disappear for the next few mastermind cycles, and then come back a little bit later on when they need some new ideas. Some people come along and they're like, I don't have anything to say this week. I just like hearing other people, and if you've got some problems, maybe I can help you. Some people will come along and they just want to vent. As you well know, being an entrepreneur, we have good weeks, we have bad weeks, and sometimes, especially if you're a solo founder, or even if you've got employees, you can't necessarily talk about a lot of the stresses that go with running a business and being an entrepreneur. You can't necessarily talk to your employees about those things. So it's nice to be able to go along with a group of other founders that get what you're going through, and being able to say, Stripe's just frozen my account again. What do I do? I've got or PayPal's locked this away, or I ran into a problem with this, this guy's trying to sue me. How on earth do I deal with this? I've never been sued before. I don't know how to deal with that. So there's all these things that pop up as an entrepreneur that you just wouldn't normally encounter in everyday life otherwise. And it's really nice to have a network of other people that know what you're going through and can talk through it. But in terms of helping them grow, there's a bit of a blueprint that, is not an exact science. But the interesting thing about SaaS as a business model is that quite often the cost of acquiring a customer up front is very high, and you're only able to become profitable if you're able to keep them over a long period of time. So retention is really, really important. The other important thing about SaaS that's kind of unique and quirky is that you're not actually solving someone's problem. You're just giving them the tools to solve the problem themselves. So by necessity, there is always an education layer that goes with running a SaaS business. It's not enough to just give someone the tool. You have to teach them how to use it. Maybe that's onboarding, that's customer support, that's having a knowledge base, that's having tutorials, that's having guides. Often it's having webinars. Like there's all this information that surrounds your software product. And all that, like there's a lot of work involved in building that and maintaining that and figuring out what information to give them in the first place. And, how does this sit in terms of marketing collateral? How does this sit in terms of support? So there's a lot to unpack there. But in terms of growing a SaaS business, the blueprint, if I know nothing about someone's business except that it's a SaaS business, I would give the same advice whether they're bootstrapped or funded. The difference is if they're funded, they can probably afford to do more things at once, and they can probably afford to go a bit faster and a bit harder because they've got the cash reserves to do it. They've got the resources to hire more people, throw more money at ads and stuff. But generally, the first thing that I recommend is starting with cold email. Cold email still works, really effective. It is cheap. It is scalable. But the best thing about cold email is that it's really, really, really targeted. So you can literally reach out to the exact person at the exact company that you want to reach out to. To get started, you can literally just manually send emails from Gmail if you want to. Realistically, you're going to need some software tools and stuff because you do need to send out a sufficient volume to get results. So that gets really tedious if you're writing stuff manually, even if you're copying and pasting. So there's some software tools that you need. And then if you're doing it at scale, there's some other, I got a whole course on how to do this stuff. I used to run a done for you cold email service. So we took all the stuff that worked for SaaS, packaged it up in this course. So it's a lot more affordable than hiring us to do it on a done for you basis. But cold email is a really good starting point because it allows you to get in front of potential customers, get on a phone call with them or a Zoom call with them and try it out. Hey, here's a value proposition. So you can run a lot of experiments this way. Hey, the price is this much. And then the next call, hey, the price is this much. Like you can tweak and test so many things faster if you're sending out cold emails than if you're trying to tinker with, copy on your website, or you're trying to spend money on, Google or Facebook ads. It takes so much volume to get the kind of insights. If you're testing things quantitatively, you can get feedback much faster if you just get on a phone call with someone. You say, hey, the price is this much. And they're like, okay, well, talk me through that. What's your budget like? You've got an opportunity for feedback there. So cold email is a really good starting point. The second thing that we recommend people do sort of in parallel with that is content marketing. Reason being that content and SEO takes a while to get going. And that's why you can't just start with content, because if you're just doing content, then what do you do for the 6 to 12 months it takes to start yielding results? You can't just not have any revenue or customers in that time. So if you do cold email first to get customers in the door, but you are in the backgrounds doing all this content marketing, by the time you're ready to rock and roll, you've now built up this kind of snowball that just kind of keeps on running. So those two in conjunction are really good. And then after that, the third thing that I recommend a lot is partnerships. I think that's a really that's a channel that's underutilized by a lot of entrepreneurs in general, but SaaS founders in particular, because everyone seems to think of paid ads. I need more customers. I need to go and spend money on ads. And the reality is that in most categories of SaaS, there's already a number of competitors selling a very similar product at a very similar price point. It's doing a thumbs up thing. And you've probably got competitors that are more established than you are. They've got deeper pockets than you are. They can outspend you, and it's easy to spend money on ads. Anyone can do it. Whereas going out and creating awesome content, figuring out the exact messaging to grab people's attention with a cold email, these are things that don't cost a lot of money necessarily, but you can get a unique advantage, a competitive advantage that way. And if you go after partnerships, I'm a big believer that if you kind of map out the customer journey, like what does your customer go through step by step? Because nobody uses a SaaS product in isolation. There are other products and services that they use alongside that. What do people buy before they start using your product? What do people use while they're using your product? And what do people use afterwards? Just write a list of all those kinds of businesses, and then go and do your research and figure out companies that provide those products and services. Hey, presto, you've got a list of potential partners because you're selling to exactly the same customer, just at different points in time. So you're not competing. It's complementary, and sometimes it's even beneficial. So if you can say, hey, look, you can go and use our tool to do this thing, but if you want someone to help you implement it on your website, we've got this partner who does the coding piece. Go and talk to them as well, and then you both win. You can do that with 5 other partners. I've got a friend who sends out an email every Saturday. And so he will go and find a potential partner selling to small business owners. He'll ask them to give him a lead magnet. And they'll do a shout out for shout out kind of email blast. So he's got a lead magnet that the other person will blast out to their list. That person will give him an email lead magnet that he will blast out to his. And so every Saturday he's getting his business in front of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of new customers for free. And all he's doing is just telling his audience about other cool products and services that they might want to use anyway, that might help them anyway. So it's not like sponsoring it necessarily, where sometimes you feel a bit icky about completely unrelated things. But think about how powerful that is over an entire year. Every single week, you're getting your business in front of 10,000 new customers or 50,000 new customers. It's really powerful. So there's a lot of stuff beyond just spending money on Facebook ads that you could do to grow your business. And quite often, especially more technical founders, just don't even think about a lot of this stuff. So that's, again, where this stuff comes in. And then once you're in the community, having access to mastermind calls, having access to workshops, being able to jump in and ask for advice. Hey, I'm writing a cold email. Can someone give me some feedback on this? Because I've never done it before. That becomes so much more powerful.
Absolutely. I love that path that you described, starting with the things that cost less, because, anybody can spend money, right? But it takes a little more effort, a little more creativity to come up with the cold email sequence that that's going to work, to create the content that's going to engage the audience and bring them in. And then that third piece of the partnerships is so hugely powerful. And I agree. It's something that I've seen in my own entrepreneurship journey. Like, the partnership might be one of the most, if not in some ways, just such a huge superpower to leverage that. And so I really like that idea that you talked about, how they find a partner selling to kind of the same audience, and they swap their lead magnets and they send it out to their email lists every Saturday. I think that's a terrific example of a partnership. And so, like, how do you, like, so you mentioned in your group, like, people get to know each other, and it's beyond just the surface level of, this is my business, that's my business, oh, okay. And then what? Nothing, right? So you're getting them to engage. And so the thing that I'd like to hear more about is, in Startup SAAS, how do you promote that? How do you get people to open up, right? Because everybody might be scared to talk about more than just, like, the first thing that, here's my speech, here's my elevator pitch, and here's my longer version of my elevator pitch. And, as you said, they might be scared to say, like, this is where I'm vulnerable. This is what I'm trying to actually figure out. And how do you get people to feel that they're going to be that they're going to be supported in that? What's the structure like of your, like a meeting, like, or a mastermind session, so that you can create that? So those two questions, right? How do you get them to open up? And then what's it look like when somebody joins your mastermind session? What can they expect? Like, what's it look like?
You're asking me to give away my secret sauce. You wouldn't be doing that.
No.
So one of the things that people notice, so reasonably small community by design, we don't allow direct competitors in. There's a few other bits and pieces to that. I'll tell you that in a moment. But what people often say about communities is that people tend to be disappointed when they join communities quite often, because what they're looking for is, I want to meet a whole bunch of other people like me that I can bounce ideas off, and I can learn things from, and maybe I'll find someone that I can partner up with, or someone that can give me an introduction, or I don't know what I'm going to get out of this necessarily, but I know that the more I put myself in front of other people and network and meet other people in my space, the better opportunities are going to come my way. What happens with most communities, though, is that either they turn into ghost towns with no engagement whatsoever, or they turn into this kind of everyone's just, forgive my French, but they're just flogging their shit the whole time. All they're doing is just self-promotion. They're just there trying to treat it as another sales and marketing channel. There's no actual engagement or help that goes on between community members. It's just everyone trying to sell to everyone else. And that's a pretty ugly feeling. To be honest, it's not the most fun or useful. So when we started the community, we took a bit of a different approach with this stuff. So the first thing that we do that's a little bit different is we ask people to jump through a few hoops before they join. So they've got to be making $5,000 a month in revenue. Got to be a founder of a SaaS business, not a VP of marketing, not a SaaS enthusiast, not an investor, not someone working at a SaaS, someone. You have to be the founder or CEO. And the third thing is you've got to be based outside of Silicon Valley, because if you're in the Bay Area, the way that you build a business is just a little bit different to everyone else. Like, and you see this a lot of the time, like with podcasts and blog posts and YouTube videos. Like, a lot of the content that exists for SaaS is mostly very Valley centric, and a lot of it starts with, we raised a $9 million pre-seed round, and like, that just doesn't exist in the rest of the world. So you start by being very clear cut about the kind of people that you want to help the most. And that helps because people automatically, like just by virtue of being in the community, they're already kind of self-selecting for having a fair few things in common anyway. So that helps. Second thing is we do, yes, it's a bit of an open secret. I do a call with everyone before they join. Now, it's part sales call, it's part demo. I'm showing them the community. I'm also part onboarding call. I'm showing them how to get value, how to use the community, how to get value out of it. Hey, you're sharing something on LinkedIn and you want other people to pile in and share it as well. Here's how you do that. Here's the right way to do it. And here's a way that's going to annoy people. If you're on a mastermind call, this is how you ask questions. This is how you get value out of it. So there's a lot of stuff that goes with that. But at the same time, it is also a screening call. And so there are some people who look great on paper and then you talk to them and you're like, oh, that guy's a bit of a douchebag. I don't want him in the group. So, and unfortunately, like that happens sometimes. So I've run enough communities before to know that when you let a few bad apples in, the good people don't leave, but they just disengage. They just withdraw. And sooner or later, you're not able to attract any good people anymore. You're only able to attract other douchebags. And then the community spirals down and down and down. And I think the classic mistake that everyone makes with communities is, not they get greedy, but they just see the money bags. And so they just want to allow anyone in who's willing to pay. And that completely destroys the value of a community because the only thing those people have in common is that they were willing to pay to get in. And that's not a good basis for commonality. I think it's important to charge. So we charge a pretty token fee. Like at the moment, it's $99 a month. So what that allows us to do, like that pays for some nice things. It means we can have a community manager. It means we can have someone who can go and find outside experts and bring them in to run a workshop on a topic that's of interest to a lot of our members. It means that we can set people up with one-on-one intros, all the little nice things that just make a community function well. They cost money. So, most people would rather spend a little bit of money to be able to say, Sonny, who's our community manager, hey, do you know someone who does this? Or do you know someone who's good at X? And she can say, yeah, actually, this person spoke about it on a mastermind call last week. Let me connect you up. Or yeah, actually, this person gave a talk about it, 3 months ago. Let me put you in touch. And just everything just flows much easier if you've got that in place. But by charging something, it doesn't matter, it could be some nominal amount of money. By charging something, you automatically filter out anyone who is not going to take it seriously. Everyone's got some skin in the game. And what that also does that I think is useful as a community owner is every single month, I need to make sure that my members are getting at least that amount of value, if not much more than that. So I'm constantly thinking, what can I do to add more value? What can I do to help people? What can I do? And the tricky part is when your audience are busy SaaS founders, more content is not always the answer. Quite often it's how do I give them maximum value for the least amount of time? How do I compress, the amount of time that it takes to get to an outcome or to get to value? So we have a few other bits and pieces that have sort of filtered into that. So, a lot of people were asking for recommendations. Do you know a good SEO agency? Do you know a good IP lawyer? Do you know an accountant who gets startups? Do you understand all this stuff? Is there someone you'd recommend? And so much of your time as a founder is spent kind of filtering out crappy service providers. So why not just go straight to the good ones? So now we have a list of vetted, recommended service providers, that other members have given the thumbs up to, which is a massive shortcut. If you're looking to hire someone, and it's going to save you thousands of dollars down the track because you're not going to hire crap people. You're going to get, good service providers straight out of the gate. So there's lots of little things there that sort of make, there's no one silver bullet with what makes communities work, but there's a whole lot of little bullets. In terms of engagement, this is where, okay, so the conventional wisdom with engagement to get a community to engage is you've got to poke people for engagement all the time, constantly asking questions. You've got to constantly be saying, several times a day, what are you doing? What are you working on? Tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. And that's, they talk about vanity metrics. Like nobody really cares how many Instagram followers you have or how many likes you get on Facebook. What matters is because you can't pay your mortgage or your rent with likes or followers, right? What matters is dollars in the bank. So we tried that initially because that's what everyone told us to do. Just poke. You haven't posted anything today. Hey, talk about this. Tell me this. And we had a few members who said like, dude, I'm running a business, mate. Like I got stuff to do. Like this is annoying. If this is sucking more time than it is giving me value, I'm going to leave. I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. So now what we try to focus on is more signal, less noise. So if we post something, it's got to be valuable. If someone asks a question, and that's why you'll see sometimes there'll be, it might be a day or two where it's just fairly quiet. And then all of a sudden someone will come in and post a really juicy question and people will pile in wanting to help out. And that's kind of a weird experience if you're new to the community and you see that it's a little bit quiet at first. But just know that there's a lot of people willing to help. It's just that they don't want to post any nonsense, like any time wasting stuff. So if you've got a legitimate problem and you want some advice, there are going to be hundreds of SaaS founders wanting to jump in and help you. But we don't poke people for engagement. We don't ask questions. We don't say, put silly memes up and say, what kind of Ninja Turtle entrepreneur would you be or anything like that. It's just, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Everyone's there, everyone's busy, everyone's focused on growing their business. So we want to add to that, not distract from it and suck time away. Might be a different story if you were building a community for a different audience that maybe had more time up their sleeve, but SaaS founders are busy, so it's got to be valuable, and it's got to provide more value than it sucks away time. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. People have to value their time, and as you said, by charging them a fee, whatever the fee is, as you said, this is kind of a nominal fee, right? It's $100 a month, basically, and that means different things to different people, right? Somebody making $5K a month, $100 a month might be more meaningful than the guy who's making $5 million a month, right? So I am curious about that, because sometimes, providing that value takes a little bit of pain for them to really feel like they're getting the value. So I am kind of curious about your thoughts on that. Like the guy who's making 5 million, like 99 is almost not a number to pay. So what are your thoughts on that? If for the people who are skewing at the top of your range of entrepreneurs in your group, is there some way that you get that? Is there like a different filter you look at them with? Like, are you really engaged at the $99 a month value? I think I saw it was Ricky Gervais, right? The comedian from England, and he's super rich, and he's talking about it. He's joking about how rich he is, and he's like, if I was a different person, paying however much it is, $200 an hour for a private trainer to go to the gym, he would never miss it. But his joke was, I can buy your gym 5 times over. This money means nothing to me. Yep. So how do you address that? How do you think about that, Ryan?
So what's interesting is that depending on the stage that you're at, you get very different things out of the community. And this is something we've only kind of figured out fairly recently too. So someone who's just, making $5,000 a month, just on the minimum kind of level to join, $99 is not an inconsiderable amount of money for them. Like that's a meaningful amount of cash. That's a considered purchase. It's not an impulse buy. So the interesting thing about people at that stage is they have not a bit more time, but they have, if they're spending $99 a month on something, it's like, okay, I need to be getting this much value out of it. What am I learning in this community? But they're more motivated to go out and apply what they learn as well. So I think that is really powerful and really helpful, especially once you start getting into mastermind calls. 3 other founders are telling you, hey, you got to go and do this thing. That'll transform your business. And you've got this like financial pressure. I'm spending money on this thing, therefore I'm committing to it. If something's free, you don't feel that pressure at all. So that helps. But you've also got this kind of implicit social pressure. I went to this call. I spoke to these people. These people are my friends. I told them that I was going to go and do this thing. I'm going to talk to them in 2 weeks' time. I need to go and do the thing now because they're keeping me accountable. So the accountability is quite a huge part of it as well. Now, for someone at the other end who's much bigger, doing millions of dollars, per year or even per month, the demands on their time are extreme. They don't have, they're in meetings. They've got layers of middle management they're dealing with. $99 a month is immaterial to them, doesn't matter to them at all. However, quite often those people will not engage at all for sometimes even, weeks or months on end. But what they're paying for is when I have a question that I don't know the answer to, I can jump in, I can ask a question in the Slack group, and there's going to be someone smart who's going to give me the answer that I need straight away. And that is worth paying $99 a month for, probably quite a bit more than that. That is the valuable piece for them. So again, it's people getting different things out of joining a community, and everyone gets, some people are more engaged, some people are less engaged, some people come to the mastermind, some people don't. There's sort of something for everyone there, but the underlying thing is when you need help, there are people here who can help you and are willing to help you. And that's, to everyone, that's worth $99 a month, if not much more than that. So,
yeah, it's a wonderful, community building business, right? So to me, when I hear about your business and as I'm here talking to you, I feel that you feel good about the community that you're creating through the business that you've created, and that's a wonderful thing, right? When we can feel good about our business, we know we're not selling something to somebody that we wouldn't want to buy ourselves. Right? And you're creating something where people get to meet each other, become friends, become partners, maybe. That's the promise, right? You hope. It doesn't mean that they will, but the opportunity's there. And it kind of depends on them individually, how much they put into it. And it also depends on the structure that you've created, which, what I'm hearing is the structure is that people do feel open and they do feel like they can overcome their fear of sharing, fear of like showing their weaknesses, so that they can, because they're like-minded people that are in the group. So this is a really valuable community to build. So what is the big umbrella idea for you, right? I know this aligns with coaching because
Mm.
you also provide a coaching service as well, right? And I assume some of the members who can afford it and have time that want to hire you for one-on-one coaching. I'm interested to hear more about that.
Mhm.
And also, how do you think of this business as an umbrella? Like, what are you building towards? Like, what's your next level? Let's
Mm.
assume you've achieved all the goals that you want with this community, the mastermind community where you're building. What does that look like, and what comes next for you, Ryan?
That's an amazing question. I wish people would ask me that more often. So you know how Elon Musk used to have his grand plan. You know, first we'll start with a really expensive sport car, and then we'll gradually make a mass market car. But if we started with a mass market car, we just wouldn't be able to do it. So we've got to start up here and work our way down. For us, it's the centerpiece is the community, because the communities are really hard to get off the ground. But once you've got them going and people are engaged and people are getting value out of it, communities get more valuable the more people who are in them. So as you grow, the community, the value of the community to everyone increases. And so there's this sort of critical mass that you've got to reach where it becomes self-sustaining, and it's not you having to post stuff all the time and engage all the time and be super active all the time. And we're at that point now, which is nice. And that's going to continue to get even more valuable as we grow. But community is kind of just the glue that holds everything else together. What we're also doing is bringing world-class people together, and a lot of world-class people have world-class knowledge in their heads that they aren't necessarily getting out into the world. So for example, we've got some people in the group that are amazing at sales, specifically for SaaS. And I said to them, hey, have you thought about putting a course together or something like this? Because every time you give advice on a mastermind call, it's amazing, but surely there's a more scalable way of getting knowledge out of your head and in front of the world. And they're like, you know what, I'd love to do a course. I don't have time though, because I'm busy building this business. So one thing that we're quite keen to do fairly soon is to partner up with some of our members, suck the knowledge out of their heads, and sort of co-create courses together. And that's quite a unique thing, because you could join the community and then have access to world-class people, all their knowledge built up over decades. Excuse me. And more importantly, you're getting advice from people that are building this and applying it right now, not some guy who did it 20 years ago and everything's changed since then. And that's fairly unique. You can't find that easily in the world. The next thing that we're looking at as well is, again, more service providers and stuff like that. So we don't want every service provider. We want, 2 or 3 different options, different price points, different service offerings and all that kind of stuff. But if you can come to a community and say, hey, I need this, and there's already someone that is already vetted that is going to do a good job, you take a massive shortcut and you prevent yourself from wasting thousands of dollars and thousands of hours on, service providers that don't deliver. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bad agencies out there. There's a lot of bad service providers. There's a lot of people that talk a big game and fail to deliver. So at the very least, that you're dealing with people who are good. But the long-term aim, the one that maybe I don't talk about too much or enough with other people, I want to put a fund together and invest in or acquire some of the businesses that are coming through. So being perfectly open and upfront about this, when you're on a mastermind call and you're getting to know some of the founders, you understand the problems that they have, what they're good at as a founder, what they're weak at as a founder. You understand the challenges in their space, you understand the business. And that's the best due diligence you can do on a company that you're potentially looking at buying or investing in. So we have some unique insights into SaaS opportunities that aren't visible publicly to a lot of other people. You just wouldn't have access to them in any other way. And at the same time, we've got a whole lot of people. We've had, I think, 7 exits so far. So people who've joined the community, subsequently gone on to sell their business. They're sitting on a bit of cash. They love SaaS. They know how to build a SaaS business. They've got skills, and they want to invest. They could go and do real estate. They could go and put it in stocks or something like that. But what they really know and understand is SaaS. So why not invest in what they feel most comfortable with? So I've approached a few members of the community about doing that. And this is more of a long-term plan. But a lot of founders who join the community, especially the more technical ones, quite often have side projects. They'll have this app that they set up or this Chrome extension over here, and it spits off a few $1,000s a month, and it gets no love or attention, but it's still this nice, profitable little side business that sits over here. What if we bought that side business off them and then put some serious sales and marketing resources behind it to make it blow up? You could build out this whole kind of stable of profitable or cash flow positive SaaS businesses. And maybe none of them are going to turn into unicorns, but there's a lot of space for businesses that spit off, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And that world is so much bigger than what you think. And a lot of founders are like, yeah, I've got these 3 things, but I've only got 24 hours in a day and I want to focus on this idea. So yes, it's bringing a couple of grand a month, but I'd much rather sell it, take the cash, invest that in the bigger business that I really want to build. So it's a win-win for everyone. That's really where I want to end up. The tricky thing is that you need deal flow if you're going to get into investment. And so this is how we build that.
So have you done it yet? I'm not stopping you.
Still in the pipeline. Still got a few other things I want to put in place first. Yeah.
When can that happen? Like, how does it happen?
So
You get
there's a lot of legal stuff involved. I've looked into it a little bit. I probably need an external partner to put in some cash as well to be able to do that. I've had a few loose conversations at this stage, but we're not quite ready to pull the trigger on it. And I don't want to pull the trigger on it yet, unless and until I've got like the dream team assembled in terms of those sales and marketing resources that I can throw at it. I don't want to go into it half baked. So I want to be able to say, hey, look, when the time is right, we can buy this or we can invest in this. Here are the people that we're going to throw at it. Here's the money that we're going to throw at it to make it work. And we've got all that ready to hit the ground running. I don't want to, hey, let's take this thing over, or let's invest now. And yeah, but I'm still looking for this person to help you with marketing, and I'm still looking for this person to help you. And then, the whole thing kind of becomes a massive distraction. So when the time is right, that's something we're going to launch. But that is what we're building towards. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think, as you said, right, having a big master plan, right, starting with the expensive car that gets you to the cheap car, through Tesla, and then with your, it really makes a lot of sense, right? You're cultivating a community of entrepreneurs. You're learning about their strengths and weaknesses as entrepreneurs, and the strengths and weaknesses of the businesses. And you're also meeting a lot of people who are also great at sales. You're an expert at marketing, and you know a lot of marketing people already, but the sales piece is a different piece as well. And can you just quickly describe for people who are listening, like, what is the difference between sales and marketing?
It's about having either conversations one-on-one or conversations one-to-many is the short and brief answer about that. But the exact separation between them, especially when it comes to something like cold email, because quite often we talk to businesses and they'd be like, oh, that's a sales thing, that's not a marketing thing. I thought, well, they're not having a sales conversation with you yet. You could still be reaching out and making contact with them. Is that not marketing? So it sort of sits, the cold email is kind of a weird channel because it sort of sits at the intersection of those two things. But there is, sales and marketing often get lumped in together because they're both involved in generating revenue. The key distinction there, I think, is that every business needs marketing. Not every business needs a sales team. If you've got some kind of self-serve app, you just need a way to drive traffic to it and get it in front of as many people as possible. There are some businesses where, hey, you need to talk to someone in order to be able to buy this thing and in order to be successful at using it. In which case, you've got to have a sales team, and there isn't really any way around it. And that's perfectly fine. It's just a completely different business model. So we want to have both of those things. So the third thing is just having like really, really, really kick-ass product. And there are some really world-class product people in there from a very technical perspective, and also from a UX perspective, and also just how do we make things that people want and love and will use and will happily keep. I interviewed a guy, one of our community members, the other day. The average customer lifetime value in his business is something like 4 or 5 years. The average lifetime value, which is crazy sticky. So maybe he's someone who might know a thing or two about creating great products. Like there's stuff like that. But to your point earlier, for us, it's really about closing the loop. So the idea is, if you're someone who has just started a SaaS business, you're at that $5,000 a month. What do I do next? You join this community, you meet people, you've got accountability, you've got peer mentorship, you've got opportunities to learn. Maybe you can take some courses, maybe you can buy some courses for your employees to upskill them while you're in the community as well. You've got access to all these service providers that can help you speed things up and accelerate things. And then when you get ready, when the time is right, if you want to raise money, or you're indeed ready to exit your business and maybe, build the next thing or sit on a beach sipping cocktails, whatever you're into, we can help you do that as well. So it's all about that whole kind of life cycle. If you can get to a point where you've got product market fit, we can help you get the rest of the way.
And just speaking back, that's amazing, by the way. Love that. And just speaking back a little bit to the sales, the marketing question, like, say somebody has a business, right? How do they know that they need a sales team versus just marketing? What is the nature of a business that requires sales and not just marketing?
So a really good rule of thumb is, what is the annual contract value of a customer? So how much money do you make per customer per year? And the number there is, depending on the business, about $3,000 is a good rule of thumb. It can go as low as, say, $1,000 if it's very much a kind of one call close. Real sales team, it probably needs to be a minimum of $3,000 a year for it to be worthwhile having a sales team, just because you've got to cover the cost of salary now. And even if it's mostly commission based, you still need to pay a base salary to these people. And if you're paying a commission on top of that, you still need to cover that cost and get it back as well. So the good rule of thumb, if you're trying to figure out, do I go self-serve or do I need a sales team, is how much you're charging for your product and how long are you able to keep a customer. Because if it's less than $3,000 a month that you're going to make out of each customer, it's going to be really difficult to build out a sales team and have your business be profitable.
So I see you following that in your own business, right? Your product is about $1,000 a year-ish, and you do hop on a one-on-one call with them. And that is before they're accepted, right? Because that's actually partially a screening call, partially to give them a tour, help them know what to expect, help them know how to add value. Here's how you could talk to the group to get a great result with this type of question. If you have a different type of question, you can post it in this other channel. And here's a way that we've seen people get these great results. But also, you're looking to see what's their personality like. Are they somebody who's going to be a taker? Are they going to bring the group down? Are they going to make it so that you can't get other people in there that are going to be uplifting, right? Because you want everybody to really be on their very best, like giving value all the time when people need it, right? When people need that value, that's what this is for at the base level. No matter if they're somebody who makes 5K a month or if they're making millions a month, they really can feel some sense of trust that they can jump in the group and I've got this problem. I don't know what to do. Please help me. I've never thought that this was going to happen before. What do I do? Please. And then there's going to be people in there. I've totally dealt with that before. Here's what I did the last 3 times it happened. Don't worry, you're not alone. Right. So, I don't remember if I asked a question that just now, but I really, I really like, I really love what you're delivering with this group. I think that this sounds like for the audience that you've picked, it's gonna provide a lot of value. And in this podcast, so we talk about the 4 F's, right? So it's about getting to know founders and also their businesses a little bit below the surface, right? So we talk about finance, which is something we just talked about. And then we talk about fitness, family, and fun, not necessarily in that order. But I think if you're cool with it, let's move on to family. Mm-hmm. Because you and I chatted on DM a little bit. We've never talked before, and this is awesome. I really appreciate you joining the call. It's been like so enlightening to hear about your business, and I'm curious to learn more about you. Right now, I'm getting to ask you some more questions so that hopefully other viewers are able to really get a real sense of like where you're at. And the goal with all these questions is not that you're perfect at everything, but it's to show entrepreneurs that we don't have to have everything worked out in every area of our life, but also that we might want to think about, trying to have something in each of these areas. So on the family side, tell me where you're at, right? You're 36.
Yep,
is that what you said?
Good memory.
You're 36, and you've moved from your home country to a new country, and you're experiencing life, right? And from what I gathered from our previous conversation, you don't have like a wife and kids or something like that. So tell me, what are your family goals and what are you doing about that? Where are you at with the family side of things?
So the joke I usually make when people ask me if I have kids is not that I know of, but terrible joke. So I live in Argentina now. And that was, to kind of segue from the finance piece to the family piece, I suppose. When you're starting business and you're bootstrapping it, usually, well, you've got sort of a couple of options. You can either go and raise capital, or you can work night times and weekends and keep your main job, or kind of juggle consulting or some kind of part-time income to pay the bills while you get the business off the ground and all that kind of stuff. There's a third option that I think probably doesn't get explored often enough, which is to move somewhere that's way cheaper, because then your runway extends so much further. So that's what I did. London is a wonderful city, but very, very, very expensive. I got kicked out of the UK as well. I applied twice for a visa and got rejected twice. That's a whole separate story. So the plan was I was going to head back to Australia, even though the time zone's terrible. If you've got, most of our members are in North America or Europe, so doing fine. I could suck it up and do calls at 3 a.m. I wasn't keen on that. So I moved to Argentina, and the plan was to spend a month here. And then in that month, I split up with my business partner, and I met a girl. And so I thought, okay, I'll stay here for a little bit longer. And then COVID happened. All right, I guess I'm going to be here for a little bit longer again. So, but what's interesting about that, or I think the way that you approach dating as an entrepreneur is a little bit different. Because I'm at a stage in life now where, my friends are married, having kids, all that kind of stuff. And like, that's, it hasn't worked out for me yet, but touch wood, hopefully that's not too far away. But you start to think about what kind of qualities you're looking for in a partner. And being an entrepreneur, the way or the life that we chose is pretty different to the way that most people live their lives. Especially, when you take the geographic stuff into consideration. So I don't speak a whole lot of Spanish, so that limits the dating pool here a little bit. B, most of the time when people are deciding where to live, most people don't even think about it. They wake up in a city one day and they're born there, and So that's where they live. So that's where they work. So that's where they meet someone. So that's where they settle down. They don't think about it consciously about that. But what's interesting is when you're an entrepreneur, and especially when you're working online, you can work from anywhere. When people move to a city, primarily they move there for a job or for a partner. So if you're single and if you can work from anywhere, how do you decide where you want to live? So you've got to come up with your own kind of criteria. I was talking to a mate about that the other day, because I think that the pattern that we're seeing now is like a lot of people are leaving Western countries and moving to Latin America, to Southeast Asia, to other countries that have good infrastructure. And if you've got a laptop and an internet, you can work from anywhere. But the interesting thing about the partner side of things is I'm a lot more deliberate now that I'm in my mid-30s about who I date, how I date them, and probably a bit more ruthless, because you know what the red flags are very, very quickly. You can be a bit more intentional about it. The thing is that I haven't quite figured out yet. When you're picking a partner as an entrepreneur, there's sort of three kinds of partners that you could have. You could have a cheerleader. Okay, so that's someone who is not in the entrepreneurial world, but they're someone who is going to, I guess there's a guy that can look after the house and cook dinner and look after the kids, and they're going to cheer you on and give you a massage when you get home. They'll be in your corner, but they're not actively able to help you build the business in any way other than take some of the stress off your plate so that you can focus on building the business. That's one style of partner that you could have. Second style of partner that you could have is, I'm going to call them a rival. It's not really a rival, but I had this in my last relationship. So quite often I find that if you're an entrepreneur, a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs. I think that's exciting. I think that's interesting to talk about. When you're dating someone who has her own business, that also throws up a bunch of challenges too, because if you're a business owner, that you have no off switch, you could work 24 hours a day and there would still be stuff to do. So you have to be very careful about setting limits for yourself. But if she's running business too, quite often you end up just talking about business all the time, nonstop. That's it. And it kills the romance a little bit. It can add distress to both of you. It can be a good thing in a lot of ways too, because you've got different businesses, you can learn from each other. There's opportunities there to, hey, I met this person, you should go and talk to them as well. You kind of you got access to a much wider network. And it also keeps you motivated too, because, hey, they're doing this thing and they're doing really well out of it. So I don't want to be the partner who's kind of dragging things down. I need to lift my game as well, which is, healthy competition can be a really good thing. You just got to be really, really careful about it. So I think there's pros and cons to both of those models. The cheerleader might have your back, but they're not doing anything actively to support you. The rival can probably do more things to actively help you, and certainly feel like I've got to rise to the occasion to be able to keep up here. And I think you can both support each other to push each other a little bit harder. But it can be pretty toxic after a while as well, and you've got to be careful about setting some boundaries together as a couple. The third one that I think is kind of interesting too is where you have a teammate. You have someone who works in the business with you, and you're building the business together. Everyone I know has universally said that is a terrible idea because if you run into problems with the business, that affects your relationship. If you run into problems with your relationship, that affects the business. They go together. So when times are good, they can be really good, probably much better than would be possible with a rival or a cheerleader as a partner. If you're building something together and that thing's taking off and you're hitting a home run, that is the most awesome thing to be able to enjoy that with the person that you want to spend your life with as well. When times are shit though, that's a little tougher to go through. So my ex-girlfriend, she's a weapon. She was still really good friends, by the way. She has her own business, but when I met her, she was working for a translations company, earning like good money by Argentinian standards, but nowhere near what she was capable of by global standards. I've never met anyone with a work ethic like her. She's smart. She's very capable. And what's interesting is I kind of introduced her to the world of entrepreneurship, and she gave me probably the best and worst compliment, or the most backhanded compliment ever. She said, "Oh, maybe I could start a business. That's amazing, right? I mean, if you can do it, surely I can do it." So that was great. But she's done amazingly well for herself now. She runs a business called Goddess. It's a pelvic, basically it's like a sex course for women that want to do stuff with the muscles down there. And so that's really taken off. She wrote a book about it, which is awesome. Anyway, really successful. Might be someone that you might want to think about interviewing as well, because she's got that world, and selling courses, and especially about sort of sensitive topic matter like that becomes really, really interesting. And it's ties into that whole theme of family and relationships and the entrepreneur behind the business as well. But yeah, so I haven't quite figured that part out yet. I know some of my friends are entrepreneurs and they have a cheerleader partner, and I look at that and I think, on the one hand, that would be awesome, but I feel like there's a whole world of your personality that you just don't get to engage with your partner. And maybe that's fine if you've got friends that you can bring on that journey with you. But maybe that would be something that I'm missing. if I've got a rival, and like I've been in that situation, and it's awesome being able to having someone there that you can kind of spar with and bounce ideas back and forth and all that stuff. But I think I needed to do a better job of setting some boundaries around that and saying, okay, like business hat off, boyfriend hat on. Here's what we're doing now. And that was a learning experience for me. So I think if anyone's who's in that position right now, I think that the advice that I would give is be very deliberate about setting boundaries about work time and personal and personal time. And if you're someone who's got, you're working together in the business, again, I think that advice about setting boundaries is so much more important. And I think what you both need to do is have an honest conversation about what happens if the business doesn't work out. What do we do? And what happens if our relationship doesn't work out? What do we do? There's financial implications. If you've got kids, like, if people get divorced, like that's really messy financially. But if you both own a business together, how do you show up for work on Monday? If, it's messy. But at the same time, I found with Belle, like, I deliberately asked her to bring her into the business because she was so damn capable and she had all the skills that I needed at that point in time. And I probably wouldn't be in the position I am now if she hadn't kind of entered the scene when she did. So I don't have the answers to those questions, but I do think it's an interesting way of thinking about it, for anyone else who's single and an entrepreneur and looking, at that stage in life where they're looking to kind of settle down. I don't know if that answers your question, but does that give you some?
Oh yeah, no, I love that answer. I like how you broke down, the dating options, right? What's available in the pool of dating options in your mid-30s? There could be somebody who's never experienced working in a business, having their own entrepreneurial, running their own business. And maybe somebody who's very into like home life, domestic life, and just wants to support in that way, give you, emotional support and all that. The cheerleader, right? The rival or someone else who runs a business, right? They're running their own business and then together you can like sort of push each other, but the danger is you talk too much about business and you lose the romance. What a huge risk, because the context of the relationship is romance. So you really, as you said, you have to set those boundaries and make it really clear. What's that look like? Setting those boundaries in that relationship where they have their own biz. You guys it's not the cheerleader relationship. It's not the coworkers, but even the coworker, you might have to set those boundaries too. How do you still create? And actually, even with the cheerleader, you still need to set boundaries from this is time when I'm away and I'm doing my entrepreneur thing and she's not doing her entrepreneur thing. So there's still so this is what I want to ask you a question about is like, what's the difference between the time of either work or cheerleading, domestic life versus the romantic time? How do you create, that's the boundary, right? So the boundary, if we look at that, there could be a boundary in all those types of relationships, then how do you create that romantic space as an entrepreneur, dating tips for entrepreneurs section of Entrepreneur in Action. How can an entrepreneur create special space with their significant other so that we know this is our romance time? How can you achieve that? What's a way that could work for people, or what might work for you, or you might tell yourself or your younger self if they were looking to achieve that?
So I've got two. The first one is when you plan out your week, you block out, like after work, I'm during work hours, I'm in work mode, and any conversation we have during work hours is a work conversation. Outside of work hours, we're in relationship mode. We don't talk about work, and it takes a lot of discipline to stick with that, especially if quite often I'd find like over dinner, I'd have this issue that was just on my mind all day, and I couldn't, I just wanted a sounding board or someone to bounce ideas off. And this is, this is the kind of stuff you might talk about with your wife when you get home normally. But I think if you're in that specific situation, I think you have to resist that urge and just say, no. Work stays at work, and this is just our time now. That affects weekends as well, because I think, especially early stage, quite often you end up working on weekends as well, because that's a time when you're not distracted by sales calls, you're not distracted by or just calls in general or just other stuff going on, and you can actually work on some of the more kind of longer term work that needs to get done, not just the management work or the talking to people work. The problem is you work weekends, you are exhausted, you're probably not much fun to be around, you're not able to kind of be the boyfriend that you need to be or the girlfriend that you need to be, or partner that you need to be. So for me, sort of setting boundaries around 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 7 or whatever your normal work hours, work mode, outside of those, night times and weekends, personal time. Depending on what you need and like everything, there are some rules that there are times when you just have to break those rules because you've got some deadlines to meet or whatever happens. The second thing, this sounds like a bit of a silly thing, but I do this. So Sonny, who's our community manager, It's actually a really good friend of mine. And you know, I even say, okay, work hat on or friend hat on, or, you know, with Bella's, you know, boyfriend hat on, or, you know, whatever it is. Like I preface it with that, which sounds like a dumb thing to do, but it does make sense because it kind of adds context to the rest of the conversation. What I do is I say, anytime you want to talk about work stuff, we use Slack. Anytime you want to talk about personal stuff, send me a WhatsApp message, and keep those two things completely separate. And even though it's really dumb, I might like, I've even caught myself, you know, sending her a message on Slack saying, hey, you know, that email you sent out, like, you know, there was a spelling mistake in there. Like, you know, next time, please be a bit more careful with it. And then I'll drop her a WhatsApp message straight after and say, hey, what are you doing this weekend? You know, and it's, and I thought, listen, there's a massive disconnect there. That's really weird, Ryan. You need to, you know, this is the same person having two completely separate conversations on two completely separate platforms. But that separation, I find, does mentally help. Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, so I'm going to use this somehow. I don't know how, but here's what I'm hearing. Okay, so you're giving some context, right? Three parts of the context that I've heard, right? You got your hours of operation, 9 to 6, whatever the hours are, that, you know, it's primarily business mode. Now, speaking as somebody who's married, you know, and this all happened for me in the last year. I married the woman of my dreams. So I'm really excited. Thank you. So there are emergencies that come up, right? There are times when, you know, I've got to drop everything because something happened and she needs help. And it's now. It's not in an hour. It's not in 5 hours. And I have my schedule's planned, you know, but I think that's something that she super appreciates. My wife, she'll bring it up in conversation. She'll say that time, and she'll mention it. You know how sometimes people drag you through stuff. Remember when you did this and it was terrible? But it is something that she keeps in reserve as a positive memory. I remember when I had this emergency and I got in touch with you, Michael, you showed up, you know, like, so my 2 cents throwing into this mix that we're talking about now is still be available during the work hours in case there's an emergency, right? And I don't think you were saying to not do that, but I'm just specifically calling it out because I've experienced it, and it pays off big dividends, because when she's remembering that, like, that's so great for our relationship, right? It puts her in a great mood from wherever she was at. She might have been in a bad mood before. Maybe she was already in a great mood, but she'll remember that thing. Oh, when I needed help, you were there for me, right? Even though you had plans, it was during your work time, right? So, but generally, right, you as an entrepreneur, you're communicating, these are my work hours, and it's mostly work, all right? And it's these days a week, whether it's Monday through Friday or whether it's also Saturday and Sunday, which is pretty common for entrepreneurs. And then also sometimes letting them know, like, you might have an emergency for your work that might come up. And then those plans that you had, you might have to change the timing of, right? Say you had tickets to something at 7:00, right? Which is outside your work hours, and you had tickets, and then you get this crazy call you got to take, and it sucks, right? For the relationship. But having those conversations up front and letting them know, like, I don't ever want this to happen. It might happen, you know, but at the same time, I can be flexible too during my work hours. Sometimes if you have an emergency, I'm going to listen, and, you know, I'm going to do everything I can to be available for you there. So letting them know there's a little leeway on each side. I also like what you said, just as a quick context provider during a conversation. Hey, work hat on, right? This is for people you're both friends with, or maybe you're in a romantic relationship as well as you work with. Work hat on. What a great shortcut for providing, like, this is what we need to talk about right now. Okay, boyfriend hat on, or whatever the case is. Great takeaway. I don't know how I'm going to use that. Husband hat on. I'm going to try that somehow. Let's talk about whatever. Let's talk business hat on for a minute. I'm going to try that. And then I like how you have separate channels for communication. So you want to talk about work things on Slack, for example. It could be anything, but you've chosen Slack to talk about work things. And then for personal things, WhatsApp, right? Because just because you made that decision, and then you're able to switch back and forth contextually, because a relationship, while you're an entrepreneur, is a complicated thing, and it is unique. So having these tools to help inform the relationship, these are unique challenges for dating that you're addressing. So I think all of these tools are tools that I'm going to try to think about how to use them. I think people who are listening to this these are actionable tactics that people could use. So awesome. These are great, Ryan. What's your challenge? Tell me what's your challenge right now. Is your biggest challenge in dating that you're trying to figure out what type of person you want to date? What is the biggest challenge in dating for you right now?
Can I add one more thing just before we move on? Because there's an interesting thing that happened. So when I met Belle, she was an employee at the start before she started her own business. Once she started her own business, she's like, oh, I understand what you're going through now in firsthand, but she didn't. And there was a blog post I read. I think it was on Quora or something. I can't even remember who wrote. But basically, the question was, what is it like to be the CEO of a startup? Or what is it like to be the founder of a startup? And this guy gave this really long, detailed answer. And what he's touching on a lot is like some of the stresses that you have as an entrepreneur. Like sometimes I find it difficult to get to sleep because my mind is whirling about all these ideas and all these things that I need to do that I didn't get done today that need to happen, or that all this stuff's on fire and I need to figure out which fires to put out and which fires to just let burn because I don't have the time or the resources to solve them. Like in almost no other sphere of life does that ever come up. And so there are some unique stresses and challenges that entrepreneurs face every day. And if you've got a partner who is a business owner, they understand that implicitly. If you've got a partner who is not in the entrepreneurial world, and has no desire to be or ever will be or whatever. One of the things that I did early on is I found that blog post and I said, hey, like if we have an argument or we have a disagreement or whatever, like this is what's going on in my head. Like read this so you understand what my world feels like. So then, if I think maybe to your point about if it's an emergency or something that pops up during the daytime, yeah, of course you drop everything and go start. Equally, sometimes if there are going to be work emergencies that are going to eat into night times and weekends, you try to keep those to a minimum, but they are going to pop up from time to time. So I think part of that conversation is like you need to kind of tell me, is this a real emergency or is this I'm just huffy because I didn't get my way this time, and that's a difficult conversation to have, especially with someone you really care about. But I think that when she read that post, she's like, oh, okay, I see it. I see why, when I say, hey, like time for bed and he's still up, like reading stuff, like that's what's going on because he's thinking about what's going on. So I think that giving someone a window into what your world looks like, if that person is not an entrepreneur, I think is really valuable. And equally, like I think it goes the other way. I think one of the worst habits that I have about myself is I do have a tendency to sometimes disregard or devalue people who are outside of the entrepreneurial world. It's like, yeah, but like what we do is a little bit harder, isn't it? What we do is a little bit more valuable, isn't it? And that's sort of something that I need to constantly check myself on all the time, because I think everybody has a tendency to overvalue the thing that they do and undervalue the thing that other people do. So we're no different as entrepreneurs. So I think it probably goes in both directions. Sometimes it would probably be a very useful conversation to have at the start of a relationship. This is what my world is like day to day. Now, if you haven't felt it before, this is what it feels like. What does your world feel like? Explain that to me. But until you have that conversation, you're both kind of guessing. And when you're both guessing, you can, make some bad assumptions that cause fights that don't need to exist, or disagreements or mishaps that are completely avoidable with better communication. So, sorry, what was your question again?
Wait, one more on this, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds great, right? And I love this. So finding out, what does your world feel like? Conversation, right? How do you get useful, valuable info out of that conversation? Because you can ask the question, right? And you could say, look, here's what my world feels like. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm thinking about a lot of different problems. I'm trying to figure out what problems to prioritize. There's never enough hours in the day. I work really hard. What does your world feel like? How do you get the value out of the other person in that conversation?
In my case, I found a really good blog post. I don't know what she could have done. I mean, I kind of understood her world a little bit because I've been an employee before. I've been a freelancer before. So I kind of already knew that maybe a bit more than she had. So it was probably a bit more one way in that example. But I think that ultimately comes down to communication. You need to be able to explain it in a way that someone else in a different sphere of life can understand. Or you need to find someone who has written it down, or find a video, or find some bit of information that you can pass on to them. It's like, this is it. This is what's going through my head, just so you understand. And it's probably not an easy task. I don't have any specific. I'm trying to remember this particular blog post. I think Paul something or other. I think he sold his business to Adobe. Drawing a bit of a blank here, but I remember I was looking on Quora one night for something else completely unrelated. I came across it. I'm like, this is what's in my head. Belle, you need to read this. So yeah, that's how that happened. And it did help, because it did give her an insight into what it's like. And now that she runs her own business, she's like, that time when you said that thing, Ryan, I got really angry with you. I get it. So it helps. Yeah, it helps. Just, if you walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Yes. What was your question before about
Really,
challenges? Yeah.
so you're really seeking to understand the other person in a way that you can really like support them going forward in all conversations. So it's like a conversation where you're really saying, I want to know you. I
Hmm.
want to know what you face during the 9 to 5 hours so I can understand you because I don't see you during that time.
Yep.
How can you tell me what I need to know to support you in this relationship? Because I'm a unique weirdo. I'm an entrepreneur. I might not be, you know, normal. Help me
Might not be.
understand you so I can get you,
Yeah.
like, and I'm an entrepreneur too, right? So I'm not trying to say anything about entrepreneurs that I don't accept for myself, right? I'm a weirdo too, because entrepreneurs are different. And that's why this podcast is about entrepreneurs. So we can share what it's like to be an entrepreneur. So I love this conversation. And yeah, my next question for you is what's your biggest challenge in dating? So you're in a foreign country, right? You don't speak Spanish. You don't speak a lot of Spanish. I can imagine there would be tons of different challenges, but I want to hear it from you. You're an entrepreneur. What's your biggest challenge in dating?
Um, the way I tend to think about this stuff is, well, okay. When I was in my 20s, I didn't have particularly high standards. Does she have a vagina? Does she have a pulse? Yep, cool, that'll do. But when you start thinking in terms of, okay, could this woman be the mother of my children? Suddenly the standards go way, 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 way up. So I mentioned that I've become a little bit more ruthless before, and like you go on a first date, start talking for a while. And it's like, okay, like that's a red flag. That's a red flag. That's a red flag. Oh, she smokes. Not interested. Maybe Ryan in his early 20s would have been like, well, she's pretty hot. Like, let's just see where it goes. But I think this is different for female entrepreneurs, just because biological clock and all that kind of stuff. I think as a guy, you've got a bit more time up your sleeve, so you feel that pressure a lot less. But well, not a lot less, but it's the men still have a biological clock too, or at the very least, you don't want to be, starting a family when you're in your 60s. Maybe that's better late than never. But ideally, that wouldn't be the case. So now, I've sort of have a bit of a love-hate relationship with dating apps, mostly hate. They're not, I mean, we can get into that. The psychology behind it, and like dating apps in general, is fascinating because they only make money if they keep you on the app. So if you meet someone you're compatible with, they don't just lose one customer, they lose two. So dating apps, the incentive is not to match you up with someone you are compatible with. It's to match you up with people who are, dangle that carrot in front of you to make you feel like, oh, it's worth, I'll give it another month, I'll keep on trying. But people often spend months or years and spin their wheels, and they go on a few dates, but they don't meet anyone of any significance. I run a tag rugby group here. Basically, I am terrible at soccer. I landed in Argentina and I wanted to make some friends and I wanted to get out and move a bit. But I'm terrible at soccer, so being an awful immigrant that does not speak much Spanish and refuses to play the national sport, I'm doing well here, aren't I? Please don't kick me out, guys. So I said, I will not only force you to speak my language, but I will force you to play my sport too. So tag rugby is a bit like flag football. If you got, for Americans listening to this, really big in Australia, they call it Oz tag there. I played in Australia, played in the US. And it's like a fun social, like non-contact version of rugby. So you don't get black eyes and busted ribs and all that kind of stuff. It's basically a glorified excuse to go to the bar afterwards and have a few drinks and meet some new people. There's a lot of expats passing through Buenos Aires. So, and they're all looking to meet new people. They're all open to finding something cool to do, meet a cool group of new people. And what's interesting is that, like, all the stuff I learned about building a community, I'll get to the relationship stuff in a second, but all the stuff I learned about building a community and an engaged community applies to this tag rugby group as well. So now we've got like a few hundred people who are in this WhatsApp group. We play every Saturday. And I've found that it is so much easier to meet people, like friends as well. It's not just strictly in a romantic setting, but when you have an activity, you do something together, you've got something in common, you've got an icebreaker, and there's kind of a natural sort of social segue where we play this game and then we go to the bar afterwards and we're just having a bit of a chat. It's very easy to then sort of organically see, oh, okay, there's something there. The challenge with that sort of stuff though is if it doesn't go well, then it's going to be real awkward the next Saturday. So the kind of, and it's doubly so for me because I'm the administrator of this group too. I'm one of the organizers. So I need to, if I'm going to set the rules, I need to uphold them, 110%. So what we tend to say is like, look, if you're interested, and it's the other thing too, if you have a sufficiently large group of single people, some of them are going to end up getting together and some of them are going to end up not getting along at all. And you need to be able to manage both of those things because not everyone is going to get along all the time. So kind of the unofficial rule with all of that is if you're interested in someone, don't leave the bar together. Send a message the next morning, ask her how she's doing, do it kind of away from the main group, because the last thing that anyone wants is to feel like, hey, I went on one date with this person, it didn't work out, and now I feel like I can never go back to that thing again. So it's a difficult challenge, but I think that's I think that's a better problem to have than the problem of I'm doing this all day long and not getting any matches that I'm interested in, and I finally get along to go to a date and she's boring as all hell. Like I know some people have met through dating apps. That seems to be the norm now, but increasingly I think there's a move away from dating apps just because it's not an efficient way to meet people you're compatible with. It might be fine if you're looking for someone, but if you're looking for the right one, probably better ways to meet that person. But the other thing too is I tend to, because I'm a psycho entrepreneur, I tend to think about this as a sales funnel, right? So I only need to be right once, but
That's true.
I need X number of people in the X number of conversations in the top of the funnel. So I need to go and meet X number of women in order to be able to go on X number of dates, in order to be able to funnel it down to finally get to someone that I am compatible with. And I think that for me, the biggest challenge is if I'm in a country where I don't really speak the language, I can't just walk up to someone in the street or walk up to someone in the bar. And like that's hard to do anyway at the best of times. When you don't speak the language, it's so much harder. So I just don't do it. And that's probably a bit of a personal cope, to be honest. But it is harder to meet someone when there's a language barrier and a cultural barrier too, but the language barrier in particular is difficult. At the same time, like Buenos Aires is an amazing city. It's really good location from a business standpoint. I'm really happy here. So there's a lot going for it as well. I guess the final challenge that probably hasn't come up yet that's worth talking about is let's say you meet someone you are compatible with. Where do you live? If I meet an expat, do we go back to Australia? Do we go to her country? If I meet an Argentinian, do we stay in Argentina? What if I want to go back home eventually? Like, and you end up, I've got friends, whenever you've got like people who meet from different countries, that conversation is always a difficult one to kind of walk through. I don't think there's any right answers unless, you're both on board with that. But that's another complication that goes with this whole kind of being geographically flexible about where you live and where you build your business. Downstream from that is, well, the people that you meet are, either going to leave or they're going to stay. So you need to decide what you're going to do. Does that answer your question? I don't feel like I'm answering the question, but I'm just talking.
No. I'm hearing a lot of good stuff. So being a good entrepreneur, you built a group, you built a sales funnel to not only meet friends, but to meet potential dating partners.
It
right?
sounds more insane when you say it back to me. It didn't sound that good when I said it, but it sounds even worse now that you're saying it back to me.
I think it's brilliant, by the way. I love it. It makes a lot of sense, right? I think that's your superpower. You're leaning on your superpower, right? But yet I think you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table from what I'm hearing, because the people that are in the group are all expats, which sounds great from a sales and marketing perspective, because you've got a niche, right? That you can, you already have all the skills to interact with, right? You know the game, the language is English, and you know that you could go to the bar afterwards, and you already know this stuff, right? But I think you're in there's this other opportunity that I'm hearing from you, and I'm going to ask you a question or two about it, because you're in a whole new country, right? So there's all these wonderful, there's part of the reason why you went there, is to save costs, right? But there's this amazing opportunity that's being left on the table, because there might be a lot of amazing Spanish speaking potential partners, and how hard is it to learn enough Spanish to say, what's your phone number? ¿Cuál es tu número de teléfono? You got it. You just learned it right there. Okay. That was it. Now that's your bridge where you can approach anyone who's Spanish speaking. And I'll just tell you the little story that I've got to go with this. And then I want to hear from you, like how you might implement some other way of capitalizing on this amazing opportunity of all the women that are speaking Spanish that you haven't been talking to. All right. So in college, I was, connected with roommates randomly, which is what happened at the school that I was at. I didn't know the guy before. And I told him, he was like, I'm studying Italian. I was like, why are you doing that? He's like, I want to meet an Italian woman, and I want to, have a family with an Italian woman. So I'm going to learn Italian, and then maybe someday I'll go to Italy. And I was like, all right, that's cool. You know what you want. And then so I said, until that happens, I just heard about this event. It's a salsa dancing thing, and it's a class. and there's going to be a live band, and it's at a bar. Why don't you come along with me to that? He said, oh, I can't dance. That's what the point is. It's a lesson, you know? So the lesson has a lot of really great ice-breaking opportunities, because in the lesson, you are matched up, usually male, female, right? You're asked to touch each other. You're meeting them in person. You're standing there. You see who they are. You see how they respond to the instructor. You see how it feels, their energy feels around you. And in fact, you get matched up, and then they rotate. So it's almost like speed dating without the stress on the dating component, but there's speed matching with different partners. And so you circulate through the whole group, right? And somehow I sold him on this, using this line of I sold him on going. And he went to one salsa lesson, and he met the woman he wanted to marry, and they got married. They had kids. And the way it happened was, he spoke Italian. He didn't speak Spanish, and they danced, but he felt something really special. And he knew that this was something really special. And he said, Michael, I need you to go back to the lesson, because he had some kind of conflict the next week. Go back there, find her, and ask her, "Qual es tu numero de telefono?" and say, "It's for Ben. It's not for me. It's for Ben." And I did this, and that led to them. That one thing, they got married from this. He didn't know Spanish. He knew nothing of Spanish, but they hit it off, and she taught him. And he started taking Spanish classes, and he learned Spanish. And then they're married. They've got kids. They've been doing this for between 10 and 20 years at this point. So there's this opportunity. There's millions and millions of women in Buenos Aires who speak only Spanish. Mm-hmm. And when you go back to Australia or wherever else your adventure leads you to next, you're not going to have access to those millions of women from Buenos Aires. But now is the time. You've put yourself there. You've done 99% of the work. So my challenge for you, and the question I want to ask you, is how could you implement this? How could you use those few words? My buddy did it. It's possible to do it with no more knowledge of the language than that as a starting point. Qual es tu numero de telefono? So what would you do? What can you do, Ryan? Tell me how you can make magic happen.
Jeez. I think your friend was probably a bit more gifted with languages than perhaps I am. So I don't have a personality in Spanish. I've tried. I can feed myself. I can survive in Spanish. I don't have a person. I can't make a joke in Spanish, and that kills me. So I guess I need to study a bit more. I have a friend who was saying, I started doing Spanish lessons, but I keep on changing teachers until I meet a cute Spanish teacher, and then that's the way to do it. So who knows? Maybe that's a good way. And then she's going to speak some English as well. So there's
helps. Your angle right there. You've just identified it. Find a cute Spanish teacher. There you go. I love it. That's awesome. All right. Okay. So let's move on to fitness. Tell me, what do you do for fitness, right? We can't get optimal energy in our bodies by just sitting all day at the desk. And it's really important as entrepreneurs that we have some way of staying fit, of eating foods that contribute to us having energy, where we're not just feeling like you can't go around as an entrepreneur feeling dead all day or having low or no energy. So what do you use, Ryan? What are your, how do you see fitness? How do you use fitness in your life? Whether it's exercise, whether it's what you eat, supplements you take. Tell me how you create success for yourself in the fitness category.
So I got a few really interesting thoughts on this. So I went through a phase, basically just before I moved to Argentina. I was completely burnt out. So I've gone from business to business to business without probably taking a break. And when you're building an early stage business, the stress and the demands on that is intense. And I got to a point where I was burnt out. I could barely get out of bed. It was useless. No energy, no motivation, whatever. And that's a really rough place to be. I think, most entrepreneurs have been through that, or if you haven't, do whatever you can to avoid it, because it's a really ugly place to be. So I did a couple of things that really helped with that. In terms of the physical fitness and the exercise side of things, Huberman talks about going out for a walk is really important, getting your 10,000 steps a day. And ideally in the morning, because sunlight in your eyes wakes you up and makes you more alert and gives you more energy and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of just in that mode of, I'm just working, or I have no energy. The only way out is through, so I need to sit down and grind. So I need to summon up the energy somehow to sit down and work all day, when what I probably should have done what I ended up doing is just get out, walk around the park, get some fresh air, get some trees and some grass and some green space to, and some sunlight does your world of good. The second thing is, so I do a lot of weightlifting. I really like weightlifting. I think as an entrepreneur, what's helpful about weights in particular is that it's so quantitative. Maybe this is just the way that my brain works, but there are periods when you're building a business where you sort of feel like you're spinning your wheels. I'm doing all this work and I'm not really seeing the results from it yet, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And your motivation is sort of proportional to, if you get a little win, you feel more motivated, so you keep on going, and then you get another little win, and you start to build up some momentum again. But sometimes if you're going through a phase where you haven't had a win for a while, if you don't have product market fit yet, or if you're really early stage, sometimes it feels like you get out of bed, you walk outside and you get punched in the face all day, and then you go home again. And that's what it's like building a business when it's, really early on. And after a while, you don't really want to go outside anymore. You don't really want to go out and face, the day when it's really tough to do. So you need a win. And so the cool thing about weightlifting is that you can almost manufacture a win for yourself because it's so quantitative, because you know how much you're lifting, how many reps, how many sets, what weight you're doing, all that kind of stuff. So you can literally just go in and say, I'm going to do the same thing every day. And I'm going to try and increase by a little bit more. There's a weightlifting program called Strong Lifts, 5x5. So you do 5 sets of 5. It's a bit more complicated than that, but it's mostly compound movements, and you do 5 sets of 5 reps. And whenever you go in, like every week or every session, you try and increase it by the smallest possible amount. So there's this incremental improvement, even if it's mostly mental. But that adds up over weeks and months. And I found that to be really, really helpful. So on the one hand, when you lift more weights, especially as like men and women should lift weights, I think, but you sleep so much better. You tend to crave healthier foods, which give you more energy anyway. You stop eating crappy junk food that gives you short-term sugar energy bursts, and you want something that's a bit more substantial. You tend to be able to just breathe a bit more deeply. Sometimes I think when you're stressed, you sort of hyperventilate a little bit, and just being able to get inhale and exhale more deeply, I think does wonders in terms of calming you down and helping you stay focused. So weightlifting is awesome in that regard. But the other benefit that I find is that little mental thing of, hey, I'm actually a bit stronger than I was a week ago or a month ago. I'm actually making some progress here. I might not be able to control the business side of my life, but at least there's one part of my life that I can control, and I am improving and I am getting better at it. And I think if you can manufacture a win for yourself at the gym, you can feed, that momentum carries through to your work life as well. So I love weightlifting. Not a huge fan of cardio, especially in winter. It's winter down here because it's Southern Hemisphere at the moment, so I don't really want to get out and go for a run in the morning. But the big hack that I found there, and this probably comes back to the tag rugby thing, is like if you don't particularly like a form of exercise, find a form of exercise that you enjoy. So on a Saturday, I run around and chase the ball around for a couple of hours, and that's it's probably not enough cardio, but it's better than what I'd be doing anyway. But I don't think of it as exercise. This is a fun activity that I enjoy. I look forward to it. I get to see my friends. That's something, that's sort of a way of sort of mentally tricking yourself into doing the thing that you don't necessarily want to do. And I find that a really useful hack as well. In terms of supplements, so here's my big learning over the last probably year or so. I still felt, so things are picking up with the business a bit. But I still felt like I wasn't my old self. I didn't have as much energy. I felt tired all the time. I was worn out. I put it down to just stress, or it's just growing pains with the business. But nobody else seemed to be experiencing that level of fatigue, and I started thinking, okay, maybe there's something a bit wrong here. When I got some blood tests done, vitamin D level was through the floor. So there is what they consider the healthy range. So vitamin D is an interesting thing. I spent a bit of time looking at it, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving medical advice. However, when doctors check vitamin D levels, often they say, oh yeah, you're within the normal range, that's fine. The normal range, the minimum of the normal range, is enough that you don't get rickets and your bones bend. Okay, so the optimal level of vitamin D is significantly higher than that. And mine was way below even that minimum level as well. It was really, really low. And I didn't realize this because I thought, I probably spend too much time inside in front of a laptop. I probably should get out in the sunshine, but I've been getting outside, I'm getting sunlight. I think some people have a genetic predisposition to just not absorb vitamin D very easily from the sun. And I guess I'm one of those people. I had no idea. So vitamin D supplements are stupidly cheap, and they make a big difference to energy levels if you are deficient. And the majority of people in the Western world are deficient. So chances are, if you're feeling a bit tired as an entrepreneur, that could be a really easy, quick win that can completely change energy levels, motivation, all that kind of stuff. Sleep, which is, and then that starts that whole thing. If you get a better night's sleep, you're more likely to go to the gym. You're more likely to have a good day of work. You're less stressed, so you sleep better the next night. That starts this nice vicious cycle, virtuous cycle upwards. But that would be my big tip. If you're feeling a bit sluggish or lethargic, or you feel like you don't have as much energy as you should, go get your vitamin D levels checked, because it might be a bit lower than you think.
Yeah. So to do that, you go to the doctor and you say, can I get my blood work done? Like what do you tell the doctor?
Been feeling really fatigued lately. Please check me, because fatigue is a symptom of bloody everything, man. Every disease makes you tired. But hey, I've got a few ideas. Like, I just want to check a whole lot of things. I'm feeling really tired. Can you check me for everything? I think that maybe my vitamin D level might be a bit low because I'm an entrepreneur and I spend a lot of time working from home or working from the office, and I'm in front of the laptop all the time. I'm probably not getting enough sunlight. Can you please check it for me? And the important thing, though, is not just to get your doctor to say, yeah, it's normal, or no, it's not. Get the actual results yourself and see the actual number. So you've got the reference range, and not disparaging, there's a lot. Doctors know more about this stuff than I do. Quite often when it comes to that stuff, they just check, is it within the normal range or not? Whereas the normal range here might not be the optimal range. And that's the key difference that I didn't realize until fairly recently. So,
so the doctor gives you a printout, and it's like several pages long, and it's all of the different tests from your blood work, maybe, I don't know, dozens of tests that they can do all at once. And it's easy to do. For you as the patient, you just tell them, please do this, check everything, and then they give you this printout, and then you can go not only listen to your doctor, but you can like do your own research and see like, what does the minimum level mean? If I have lower than the minimum level, you can learn more about it on your own. I think that's something that people can remind themselves of doing if they haven't done it before. It's a new thing for them, and don't be scared to go to the doctor and ask, like, hey, I got low energy. I think that's a terrific thing to do for people, because we're not doctors. We don't know what we're talking about. We're entrepreneurs, right? We didn't go to school for a doctor, but the doctor will. They will be able to tell you a lot of stuff that you didn't know. So you can ask the doctor about your vitamin D. What else can they tell you? Like you need more sleep. Like they can tell you these things. Like, what kind of things have you gotten from the doctor that you could use?
I mean, I think the danger there is almost everyone would probably feel a lot better if they were less stressed, slept more, exercised more, and ate a bit healthier. Like that seems to improve basically everything. The problem is that as an entrepreneur, there are some aspects of your life that you can't control, and entrepreneurs tend to have a higher level of stress than the global population, because building business is a stressful thing. So I think that whole there is a normal level of stress that goes with building a business, and there is a normal level of fatigue that goes with, because you're just putting so much effort and energy into it. But there's probably an abnormal level of fatigue. And the key takeaway for me is learning to differentiate between how tired should I feel at the end of the day versus I can't get off the couch. That's not a normal level of fatigue, and there's something wrong there. It might be vitamin D. It could, that's why you go and get these tests done, because it could be anything. There are so many things that it could be. The key thing though is just looking into the supplementation and asking your doctor, okay, what do I do about this? Given that, I realize ideally in an ideal world, I would get outside and get sunlight for 2 hours every day. Probably can't do that right now because I got stuff I need to do, and that involves me sitting in front of my laptop all day. So given the constraints that my lifestyle permits, what can I actually do? And sometimes that's a unique challenge for a doctor as well, because what is optimal and what is possible are not always the same thing either. So that's an important conversation to have as well.
I think that you've done an excellent, you've done a great combination there of being able to get yourself to get outside with, and I think we're moving towards the fun bucket part of the show now. So like, you found rugby, right, is a fun hobby that you enjoy, and you've set up a group, in your new location, right? You're in a new country. There wasn't a group that you felt like you wanted to join. You created your own group. This is a fun thing for you to do, and you're getting some vitamin D, which was a problem that, you found through going to the doctor. So you've combined a few things there: meeting people, getting exercise, getting outside, and getting sun. But I want to talk to you more about the fun aspect of your life. So like, we're busy as entrepreneurs, and we don't want to just like do something that's a little fun. We want to do stuff that's a lot fun. So what are some like things? We heard rugby, and that's really fun for you. Tell me some more hobbies or things that you really enjoy doing. Like, what's really fun for you, Ryan?
So one of the things that I've tried doing recently for a few different reasons is trying to move my hobbies in a direction that's better for me. So what I mean by that is, so I used to play a lot of video games. That was my method of de-stressing. Not great from a health perspective, because you're in front of a laptop, in front of a screen all day long. At the end of the day, do you really want to be sitting in front of a screen for more time? And it keeps your brain really active, which makes it harder to sleep and all the rest of it. So I think that there's like a lot of guys in particular, gravitate towards video games, or they did that as a teenager and kind of carried that on through. What I've been actively trying to do is to decrease the amount of time that I spend playing video games. But it's like, okay, what can I substitute that for that I do enjoy that is a little bit better for me? So I do a board games night with some of my friends. I think recently even turned it into Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a massive nerd, by the way. Like, I play rugby sometimes, but I'm a massive nerd most of the time. And that can be like, if you meet, like, I was a bit skeptical about it. That's pretty nerdy even by my standards. But if you get a good group of people together and you have a few drinks, it can be a real laugh. It's good fun. So I do both of those two things, from time to time as well. Usually once a week, I'll sort of do one of those two things. And what I like about it is that it's a way of catching up with friends regularly. So these are friendships I want to maintain, but it's also doing an activity that I enjoy. And it's also an activity that I can substitute for an activity that I would have done previously on my own that was probably way, way worse for me. It's a bit more social. It means I've got to get up out of the house, go to someone's house, whoever's hosting it, and think about something other than work for a while and engage with other people for a while. And if you're you have a few drinks, it can be fun. If you want to get stay away from the booze for a little while, and I tend to do sort of a month here or there without the booze just to kind of reset things a little bit, then at least getting away from always going to a bar to do stuff like that. That was the biggest problem when I was living in the UK. Social life in the UK revolves around going to the pub. Oh my God, I think I drank so much more in that country than I ever have before or since, because that's the culture there. And it's very easy to get sucked into that. I think in the US, you guys are a little bit more responsible, but the other thing, the second thing that I've tried to do is to not do one-on-one catch-ups with friends anywhere near as often as I used to, and which sucks a bit. And especially if you're talking, again, that comes back to, this is a window into what my life is like. But I've had to say to friends like, look, I want to catch up with you. I have this much time available per week, and these are all the relationships that I want to maintain. I do not have enough time to meet up with everyone one-on-one. So why don't we meet together as a small group? Can we get like 6 people together, have people over for dinner or whatever, but just rotate it so it's a different 6 people every time. So we might get to catch up, once a month or something. I still get to see you face to face. We still get to do that, but probably not one-on-one. And that's a bit of a difficult conversation to have sometimes, but I think it comes from a good place. I want to see you. I want to have you in my life. I want to maintain this friendship. It's just that this is the only way I'm going to be able to do that. And people will take that in different ways, but most people will be pretty understanding and accepting of that, because they understand like it comes from a place of, I'm trying here, but this is the life that I lead. It is fairly unique and fairly different. These are the boundaries and constraints around it. This is what is possible. So let's find a way to do what we can within the realms of the possible. So I do a lot of that stuff for fun. There's this is great. There's lots of stuff going on. I've got a friend who runs like a pub trivia thing once a week, which I go along to occasionally. There's a whole lot of other bits and pieces. I'm a terrible dancer, so maybe the salsa class is a good idea. Maybe I can't decide if I need to work on my Spanish lessons or my dancing lessons first, but I probably need help with both of those things. But I do also think that it's good to have a mix of hobbies as well. Some people just do sports, and that's great, but I think there's some value in exercising the mind as well and having some kind of mentally stimulating activities other than work. I think that's really important. So, board games / Dungeons and Dragons versus rugby, they're kind of at polar opposite ends of the spectrum there. But I get a buzz out of both of those things. So I do both of those things. But the big takeaway that I've had is certainly like whatever activity that you're going to do, try and do it in a group, and ideally pick a new activity to try out. That's supposed to be my New Year's resolution, but I was very lazy at implementing it. So this is my August resolution, is once a week, go in, try a new activity that I haven't done before. I went to an event a while back called F the Small Talk. And it was like, after a while, especially when you hang out in sort of expat digital nomad circles, where are you from? Where are you going next? Where have you traveled to? What do you do for work? All that. You have the same conversation over and over and over again. And so the way this works, I think they do it in a lot of big cities now. You go along, you meet a bunch of random strangers. You're all there for the same reason. You want to meet new people. And they give you these cards on the table, and they're basically conversation prompts. And it's not deep and meaningful stuff necessarily, but it's just beyond the surface level. It's not like, what made you cry or anything like that. It's like, what was the thing that made you laugh the most in the last month? Or, how often do you keep in contact with your family, and would you prefer it to be more or less often? Things like that. The conversation that we're having now, moving beyond the sort of surface level interaction, I think is really valuable and a lot of fun, and you just don't get to do that as easily anymore. So that was fun. That's something I'd recommend and probably go back to. So anyway, long convoluted answer to your question is I try and strike a balance between doing stuff that is physically stimulating and mentally stimulating. I try whenever I can to make sure that if I'm doing a hobby, I do it with a group of people. So at very least, even if I don't enjoy the activity, I get to hang out with my friends again, or I'm getting an opportunity to meet new people. And I think that's a lot more time efficient as an entrepreneur than doing one-on-one catch-ups, because I can't really do that anymore. I just don't have the time to be able to do that and still hang out with all the people that I want to see. So yeah, that's what are your thoughts?
It's about the one-on-ones. Like I do understand expanding social circle. You've met more people. You want to keep in touch with them. You want to get to know people. You don't want to discard people from your life necessarily. But there was a time when you were doing more one-on-ones, and maybe that's the only thing that changed, right? That you just got more people in your life. But prioritization is a big part of being an entrepreneur in every aspect of our lives, right? We prioritize what business problems to solve. Like you said, what fires are you just going to leave going, and what fires are you going to solve, right? And then same thing when we move to family. Like, what are you going to prioritize here? Like, who are you looking to meet? Like, what type of relationship do you want to have, right? Figuring those questions out, which are still questions. You don't have to have the answer, today or any day, but at some point, you'll land on an answer. And it's a great question to ask. And so in this area of things, like, I'm wondering, is there more to it, to the one-on-one, like prioritizing friendships and in the fun space of things? That is tricky, as you mentioned, right? And you're saying you used to have more one-on-ones and now you're doing more group things, right? What about what about a relationship would make you want to do more one-on-ones in that relationship? What about a relationship would want to make you take it away from, hey, wait, it's cool to be with the group. It's cool to have fun with the group, but maybe this person I actually do want to have a one-on-one with. Like, what would that look like for you? What would make you want to contract a little bit? Because life is expanding and contracting all the time, right? There's no judgment with that. But what would make you want to contract and get closer to somebody through one-on-ones at this point?
Well, the way that I tend to think about this stuff is, so everyone has seasons in their life and in their business too. So, that classic thing, you could focus on wealth, you could focus on work and business and investment and all that kind of stuff. You could focus on family, and within that, do I spend time with my spouse or my boyfriend or girlfriend? Do you spend time with your kids? Do you spend time with your parents and your brothers and sisters and the extended family that you've got? Do I spend time with my friends? Do I spend time meeting new people? Do I spend time looking after my health and going to the gym and doing more exercise, or cooking healthier meals at home as opposed to eating out? Do I spend time learning? Do I spend time there's all these things competing for your attention. The reality is you can't do all of them. So there we go. There's 7 things. You've probably got enough time to do 3 of them at any one point in time. So which 3 are you going to pick? And for me, this is my attempt to break the system and make 3 fit into 4. But I'm at a stage in life now where, so the business is important. Like, that has to be a focus. I'm an entrepreneur. That's always going to be a focus. But I'm also at a stage where I'm single, want to sort that out. So I need to invest time in going on dates, meeting people, and hopefully when I meet the person, then you got to spend time, building that relationship as well. In order to meet the person, you got to invest time in meeting new people in general anyway. There's a third thing, and trying to, look after your health at the same time, and trying to maintain friendships at the same, there's not enough time to do all those things. So this is my attempt at, condensing that as much as possible. So the short answer to your question is, I think that the one-on-one stuff, like, for now, if it was a close friend and it was an emergency, family members passed away, they need someone to talk to, they've just been through a breakup and they need someone to take them out for a beer, like, okay, sure. But again, it's like that scenario with, the partner that I described before. Is this a real emergency, or is this a, hey, I just want to hang out kind of emergency? Because if it's a, hey, I just haven't seen you in a while, like, I understand. However, probably need to draw some boundaries around that, and please be understanding. And that's a difficult thing. If I've got a friend and they're going through a hell of a time, okay, fine, you drop everything and you be there. Equally, like, if you the one-on-one time, okay, I probably need to invest a bunch of time in going on dates and meeting people until you find the girl. So and there's not, I don't think there's a real shortcut to that. You just need to have enough at bats to until you hit the home run, right? So so I'm using baseball metaphors. I don't really understand baseball as a sport. I think that's the way it works. But I could talk about cricket, but cricket, it's a much slower, more boring sport. So yeah, the analogy is not going to work. But anyway, I think that was something approximating a baseball analogy. But it just comes down to you need to give yourself enough chances to meet the right person, and that involves a time commitment. You've got to invest the time. I could just as easily say, you know what, like, I'm going to spend more time hanging out with friends, and that's fine. But the trade-off of doing that is I'm not investing enough time in meeting the girl. And 5 years go by, I've probably missed my chance to do that. So right now I'm in a season in my life where that's a priority. So I have to make it a priority in my time. The way I divide up my time kind of reflects that. And that'll change as I get older. Once kids come on the scene, I'm sure, your priorities shift again. So that's the way I kind of look at it right now. Again, don't know if that's a right answer or a wrong answer, but it's my answer.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I remember I was hearing Jesse Itzler on a podcast recently, and he's a entrepreneur, and now he's got a family, and he likes to run and stuff. I've never met him or talked to him, but I just listened to the podcast, and he was talking about contracting his number of friendships. Right? He's a bit older, like I think he's got 20 years on you, maybe. So he, at his stage in life, he was looking to have fewer friendships with greater quality in the friendships. So, as you said, seasons. There's a part to every season in life. Now it makes sense where you're at in your life. You want to expand the network. You want to keep meeting people and growing, and in that way, and having fun. And then you're going to find that quality person. As clearly, this is what's going to happen in the romantic side of things. You're going to find that quality person, and then you're going to contract that completely, right? So, but maybe there's an echo in just the friends part of it. Again, that's just what I heard from that other example. But so yeah, it's pretty spot on from what I'm understanding where you're at. Can I ask you about advice for others? Can we move to the advice for others section?
Yes. Do you want to narrow it down, or do you want to just cast out as a broad question? Do you want advice on each one of those four things, or?
Yeah, kind of like what, yeah, you want to, like, who have you come across? I guess, okay. We don't have to call it advice for others. We could just call it like a lightning round.
Mm-hmm.
You want to move into a lightning round?
Yes, but
what's the best investment you've made for your financial health? Okay. What's something that's moved the needle for you in terms of moving you forward in the bucket of finance? An idea, a book, an influencer you follow. What were some tactical things that other people could also get value from?
Okay, so I'll give you a tactical thing straight up. Bit of shameless self-promotion here. We put a lead magnet together, and I've had 3 or 4 different attempts at a lead magnet in the past, and none of them really seemed to land. Then we found one that did, and so I'll give you the URL for it: startupsource.com/list, LIST. So we put together a list of 320 places where you can submit a SaaS startup and get a backlink and get some eyeballs and some traffic to your website. So that was useful for us because when you're starting out, initially when we're talking about the cold email versus content marketing and everything else, with the cold email stuff, it's like when we stopped sending out emails, the sales dried up. So we wanted to get the content marketing piece cranking, and one part of that is generating new content, but another part of that is building links to that content, and that's often the stumbling block for a lot of people. So that the hack that we found is okay, if you go and list on 320 different websites and they're all pointing back towards you, and they've probably all got much more domain authority than you have, that is going to amplify all the efforts that you're putting into generating that content. The bit that I didn't expect, the unexpected kind of side benefit of that is once we listed on all of those places, people started writing blog posts, and it'd be like listicles. It'd be the top 5 communities for entrepreneurs, or the top 10 communities for SaaS, or whatever. And they'd find us on that list, and they'd feature us in these articles. And so we ended up getting all these extra links and traffic and everything else that we never really anticipated coming indirectly. So that's a resource we've got available for free. If you want to go to startupsource.com/list, and I'll give you the URL if you want. That's a really easy way if you're just starting out to give you a bit of a leg up. The second learning from that though is we put that together deliberately as a lead magnet so we could capture email addresses by offering value. And I tried a few other types of lead magnets before that just didn't really work out. And so I needed to, so with lead magnets in particular, there's one bit of advice that I give. People don't want more information. So they find you, they read your blog posts, they watch your YouTube videos, they listen to your podcast, whatever it is. That's the information. They've learned something in that information and they want to now take action. So if your lead magnet is a course, or your lead magnet is an ebook or a guide or a how-to or something else, you're just layering information on top of more information. That's not helpful. That's not what people want. What you want to do is give them a resource that they can use that will help them to take action faster, or more easily, or at less risk, or with lower cost. So all the other lead magnets we had were more information. The one that worked was, here's a list. Here's literally a spreadsheet with the website that you go to and the domain authority of that website, so you can order them and prioritize which ones you want to focus on reaching out to and listing on first. So this is a tool that you can use to help you implement what you've learned after you've consumed the information. So stuff that works really well with that. Checklists, resource lists, calculators are good if you're a programming kind of type, and you can knock one of those together. Putting together like some kind of vetted list of freelancers who offer this service, or a vetted list of service providers that do this thing, or a vetted list of communities you can list your startup, your SaaS business on, whatever it is. Like, giving people a thing that they can actually use to take action, as opposed to more information, so much more valuable, and like the conversion rate should reflect that. So that's the bit of advice that I would give on the finance side of things. Is for anyone who is an entrepreneur and they're just starting out, they're looking for some kind of cheapy marketing hacks that are going to have ongoing value rather than just kind of once-off sort of value. So that's a permanent increase, by the way. Once you're on those websites, you kind of stay on there for a while, and it doesn't cost you anything to list. So that's some advice I give on the finance side of things. On the, what was the next one? Was it fitness or family?
Well, let me just recap what I heard. Okay, so an entrepreneur, right, who wants to get a boost, right? We can call it a cheesy marketing hack, or we can call it like an ongoing boost in their visibility, getting more eyeballs on their stuff. Can put out not a course, because people aren't looking for more info. They're looking for a quicker ability to take action with a lead magnet. And so rather than a big course where they got to read a lot of stuff, it's more like links, a list of links to something useful, whether those are service providers, whether it's a checklist of things you need to do to achieve something, or, a calculator, or a list of, communities they can join, or a list of, where to get backlinks is the one that you provided. And so that link is startupsauce.com/list. Is that the right link?
That's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they can go there and they'll get your list of places where they can submit their website or their web page in order to get on what are these things they're submitting to? This is a website of some kind.
Often they're directories, websites. It's a place where there's a list of startups, or there's a list of AI apps, or there's a list of Chrome extensions, or a list of whatever your business happens to be. It's geared towards SaaS businesses, but it will work for most businesses as well. So you go in, you upload your logo, you write a bit of a blurb about your business, you put a link to your website in there, and you wait sometimes a few days, sometimes a few weeks, and you'll get a page listed on their website pointing back to yours. And so you'll get a few, like usually a bit of organic traffic. You get some people to go to that website, go, oh, this looks interesting, and click on the link. The real value in it, though, is you've now got a backlink pointing from their website to yours. Their website probably has a lot more content, probably has the SEO metric is domain authority. That you it's a score from 1 to 100 of how authoritative your domain is. And a link from a website that has a higher domain score, domain authority, is worth a lot more than a link from dodgy spammers, rus.info. So what you want to do with this list is go through, prioritize it by domain authority, start at the top, and go to every single one and list your website on there. Or that's a bit tedious after a while, going through 320 of them. Easier thing to do is probably get a virtual assistant and get them to go through and do it all for you, and just have that kind of working away in the background. Like I said, it's sort of a slow burn task. It'll probably take you a few weeks to get through the whole list. But once you've got it, you've got a permanent increase to your domain authority, permanent increase to the number of backlinks you've got, and you've now got all these other ways that people can find you by going to a website. Oh, this looks interesting. Click on the link and coming to your website as well. So really handy hack. And that amplifies any content marketing that you do, because it's going to be much easier to get that to rank in Google search results as a result of all those backlinks and all the increased domain authority. So that gives you a good boost straight out of the gates when you're a new business and you're just starting out, and the whole thing's free. So why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Terrific. Yeah, that's great. That's exactly the kind of stuff we're looking for. So, all right. So what's your best investment for fitness? Like, what has moved the needle for you? Book, app, supplement, diet, new exercise routine. What has moved the needle for you lately, or a new influencer?
So I talked about the vitamin D thing. I started getting into the Andrew Huberman podcast. He talks about a bunch of stuff, but one of the big things that he talks about is just sunlight and early morning walks in particular. I haven't been great at implementing that through winter because it's cold outside. And I'm an Australian. I have hot blood. I need sunshine and hot weather. I don't cope well in the cold. But so the vitamin D thing was something that was a big revelation for me, and that's moved the needle in a big way. And it's something simple to go and get checked that a lot of people just flies under the radar. The other thing is joining a gym to do weights. I used to have a home gym, and I would find that even though it was close by, I wouldn't actually tend to do it that often. So when you join a gym, okay, you paid for it, so you feel this obligation to go and use it. But the rule that I have is if I can't walk to a gym and I'm not 15 minutes away from the gym, there's no point in paying for it because I'm never going to use it. If I have to drive somewhere, if I have to get on a bus or a train, I'm never going to go, realistically. So if you are going to spend money on a gym, and you should, because then you've got this, I paid for it, therefore I need to use it. So you've got this external motivation to go and actually do something there. If you just put on your gym clothes, start walking to the gym, even if you do nothing there, you walk in the door and you turn around and come back again. If it's 15 minutes away, you at least got a half an hour walk in. You've at least, and once you get out the door, the hardest thing is just the motivation to get out and go start moving towards it. Once you're there, you probably find, oh, I'm here now, I'll sit and do some stuff. But I've found that if you sign up with a gym that is within a 15-minute walk of where you live, you're so much more likely to go there consistently. And even if you get there and you turn around and come back again, at least you got outside for half an hour. So that's my hack.
Yep, that's a great one. I love that you said that you make it okay for yourself to just go in there and then like walk away, because the reality is that rarely happens. But by lowering the bar for yourself, it gets you out the door. And so you have no greater ambition than to just get out the door and get there, and you've already done half of your 10,000 steps by walking. That's terrific. Okay, so best investment that's improved your life in the realm of family or dating. Like what is it that's moved the needle for you that made your dating world or your family world better?
So I'm a big believer in going and joining activity groups. That's my big kind of takeaway over the last couple of years. I think that I'm pretty against the whole dating app thing now, to be honest, just because I used to, like, I was digital nomad thing. When I got to the end of Tinder several times in my life, and when you get to the end of Tinder in a city, you're like, well, I guess I have to move to a new city now, because there's I can't tell you the level of rejection that goes with being in a big city like London with 10 million people and getting to the end of Tinder. It's like, there are 10 million people here, and none of them are interested in you, Ryan. That really hits you in the feels, Michael. So there's a whole lot of problems with dating apps. Some people use them successfully, but for the most part, the amount of time that you invest into a dating app, in terms of even just doing this or having conversations with people and then they don't respond to you or anything like that, like I find just talking to people face to face is a lot more enjoyable anyway. So if you go and join an activity group, even if it's something you've never done before or something you're not particularly great at, if you're dating, try and optimize for an activity where you're likely to meet the opposite sex, right? So probably wouldn't go and join a powerlifting gym as a way of meeting women. That might not be the wisest idea. I've got a friend who met his now wife at a pole dancing studio, and they showed up and everyone stared at them because they'd never seen a man walk into a pole dancing studio before. And when they found out they weren't gay, they had plenty of attention. So that's my fallback plan. But I think that at the very least, being an entrepreneur is all about prioritizing and optimizing your time. So if you, I want to meet someone, cool, I'm going to devote time to an activity that enables me to meet new people on a regular basis that I enjoy. And if I don't meet anyone, if I don't meet the girl there, at least I got some exercise, or at least I got to make some new friends, or at least I got to meet some new people that might down the road lead to meeting the girl or making some new friends or learning something that I didn't learn before. There's a side benefit to it as well. Just doing this all day long doesn't really help you. So that's my big hack there.
So the activity that you might recommend could be something like hiking or a book club or going out to trivia night or, we talked about social dancing, or sports, rugby.
I think sports are good because by necessity you end up it has to be an activity where you're going to end up talking to people. You could go and do a movie night, for example, but you're just going to sit there in silence. Whereas a sport, you're talking to people and then you probably go for a drink afterwards, or if you, and then that by its very nature tends to be a bit more social. So I would optimize for something where you are moving around. There's a natural kind of icebreaker or a natural way of, talking to someone, opening up a conversation. I'd optimize for something that is mixed sex, or at least, there is a reasonable number of people that you are interested in dating who are going to be attending, that sort of thing. But I'd also optimize for something that you enjoy as well. So if you really freaking hate every minute that you're there because you just really don't like that activity, you're probably not going to keep on going to it. You're probably not going to be in the best mood anyway. You're not going to be your best self when you do meet people there as well. So, I hate swimming. I'm not a good swimmer. I know that's a terrible stereotype for Australians, but I'm not a good swimmer. So me going to an activity that involves lots of swimming, it's not for me. And I realize there's a lot of benefit because there would be a bunch of hot women in bikinis, and that kills me, but not for me. So that would be the thing too. So pick an activity that's something that you enjoy, something where you're going to meet the opposite sex, or, but also like, don't just go for the purpose of meeting a person, because you can come across as a bit, predatory. much better to go there and just be like, hey, I just want to meet some new people and see where that takes me, because it might be the guy that you started chatting to and he seemed kind of cool and he invited you to a house party, and his sister brought her friend along, and that's the person you end up meeting. And you never know, you would never have gotten in that situation had you not spoken to the dude. If you were just constantly on the lookout for who's that girl I'm going to go and talk to, you would have missed out on all that. So yeah, being open to
I'm curious to hear the backstory about the guy who went to the pole dancing class. Was it just because he had so much confidence in himself and he realized this is a marketplace that's being untapped? There's no guys here. He's a straight man. There's a bunch of women, some of whom may be single, and they're at a pole dancing class, and so he's able to sort of disrupt the paradigm, right, of it just being a women's class, and he could go in there and be the one guy who's straight, single, looking to mingle among a lot of women who are doing a pretty sexy activity, right? Pole dancing is, by its nature, a sexy thing to do, right? It's meant to be that, in part, as well as being athletic and being, something that you can pursue as an art form. But there is that quality to it that's also very sexy. So I think that was a pretty unexpected guerrilla marketing tactic from that guy. I am interested to hear, what was his mindset going into that?
Well, he's also an entrepreneur. So I think he was very much like, where is a less competitive environment that I can pivot to? And that was where he ended up. But no, I think it was just he and a mate of his decided, hey, where's somewhere that we go to meet some girls, and it's not going to be, we're going to have a favorable ratio. And they were brainstorming, they came up with this. They thought, right, we're going to go and do that. Like I said, they walked in the door, they got a whole lot of weird looks because nobody was expecting two straight dudes to walk in. But I think they even made fun of it too. They said, oh, yeah, I heard it's like a really good core workout. No, I'm just here to meet some pretty girls. So, and that, just leaning into that, I think can probably, with a grin on your face, probably open some doors, rather than, no, I heard it's fantastic exercise. I'm definitely not here for anything else. I think the
so
key
they were
thing
honest
is
about it.
Yeah.
Right? They're honest about their intentions, and as long as they didn't get kicked out, then they could find success there.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that they went in there and they weren't like, I actually want to be a pole dancer, when that really wasn't the case. They said, I'm here, I'm curious, and I am also interested in meeting women. And if that doesn't rule them out, then they're home free to not only learn something by being in a pole dancing class, but also to pursue their interest in dating. So I think that's a huge win-win.
Absolutely. But I think the key to it too is they were honest and authentic about that. Like if you're a girl and two straight guys walk into a pole dancing studio, you know why they're there. Like, you know why they're there. It's not a great mystery why they've walked in there. It's probably not the core workout, So, but you can get away, like as a guy, certainly you can get away with an awful lot if you smile and laugh and make a joke and tell them what they already know to be true and just lean into it. And that tends to work so much better than trying to hide your intentions a bit. So certainly worked for him.
Yeah. I have heard bad stories about the opposite. I've heard about guys going into even partner dancing, which isn't a situation where it's unexpected for a guy to be. But I had a neighbor, and he used to marvel when I would get a date or something like that, which I think is a normal thing to do when you're meeting people who are open to dating and you're trying to date. It's pretty normal, but he was baffled by it. And the question he asked me, he said, Michael, when you meet them, do you tell them they're a good dancer or do you tell them they're a bad dancer? And I'm like, I don't tell them anything about their dancing. I ask them on a date. And he's like, oh, that blew his mind. But just being transparent about why you're there can lead to a terrific outcome. And I heard stories. He would go out and they didn't know what he wanted. Is he trying to date me? Is he trying to just dance practice with me? Because he wasn't straightforward. He said he wanted to practice dance with them, but what he really was looking for was a date. So I think you brought up something very powerful and important there. Be transparent. Say you want a date if that's what you want. If you really want to take a pole class, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are only interested in the pole class so that you can have a date, be respectful of the pole class. You've got to participate in the pole class too. You can't just show up and make fun of it and say, this is a laugh, this is a joke, ha ha ha. You guys, it's ridiculous what you're doing. You have to be super respectful of the actual scenario. You're not going to get anywhere unless you're showing that level of respect. And then also on top of that, do be completely transparent. That's a winning formula in my book.
I think so.
That's terrific. Thanks for sharing that one. And then fun, Ryan, fun. Tell us what's the best investment that you've made for fun?
Ooh. I'm going to repeat myself here. I think starting that tag rugby group was huge for me, because I did not have really any friends in Buenos Aires when we started that. We came out of the pandemic. They had a really bad, really long lockdown here, really intense. And so my girlfriend at the time, Belle, she's like, hey, let's go out and get some sunshine. And then I think it was my birthday that year. She bought a ball and she convinced all her friends to come to the park and like, we know you suck at soccer, but teach us this game that you were talking about a lot. So we did, and it was fun. And we thought, hey, we could turn this into a thing. So the other hack there is like we started that group together. So I think maybe for entrepreneurs, we tend to have a bit more get up and go and initiative and like, oh, this thing doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, make it exist. It's not that hard. It's just like building a business. Okay, you have an idea, you explain it to people, and you go out and market it. So we just spammed a bunch of sport WhatsApp groups with all the other expats. We went to all the Facebook groups. We went to where do all these other people hang out who speak English and want to meet people in Buenos Aires? And they're already playing other sports. Would it be so hard to convince them to come and give this one a go? And then when they came along, it's like, cool. How do we keep people coming back? Make it fun. Let's go to the bar afterwards. Cool. And now, and then it kind of snowballed from there. So, when we started it, we were struggling to get, 10 people to show up. Now we're getting like 50 and we're having to think about finding a second location or something. That's a whole separate problem, way bigger than I wanted it to be, because it's now almost a job running that as well as a business. But the hack that I think is, especially if you land in a new city and you don't know anyone, you want to meet people, start an activity group yourself, because then you can control it. If someone's annoying, you can kick them out. If the venue sucks, you can move the venue. And generally, everyone's been to an event and they're like, oh, that's a bit crap. I don't know if I want to come back again. The cool thing about being an entrepreneur is, okay, it comes naturally to you to start things from scratch. So use that superpower, lean into it, and design the kind of social experience that you want, because then you can attract the people that you want to attract into that social experience. That's been huge for me. Yeah.
How did you find those sports WhatsApp groups?
So everything is in a WhatsApp group in Buenos Aires, or at least all the expat stuff. There's a WhatsApp group for bloody everything. So, you got to turn them all on mute after a while, otherwise you'd never see anything. But that's why sometimes when I say let's use WhatsApp for personal stuff, also I may not get back to you for a while because I've got got to scroll through all these other groups first. But the expat community is fairly tight knit. So you go to the Facebook group, and there'll be a list of all the WhatsApp groups for various sports. So you join those, and then you say, hey, you're playing basketball, would you like to come in this thing? Give this other one a go. And that's really all it was. The same approach that I would take to cold email. Like, find someone who has already displayed interest in something related. Let's see if I can take that person and tell them about my stuff and see if I can. And you're not going to get 100% strike rate. That's why you got to sit there and just grind away until you do. But you don't need everyone to say yes. You just need enough for a game. And then they have a good experience. They go tell their friends that exactly the same approach that you would take to building a business applies to building a community around an activity. So, but certainly I think that's relevant to entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Yeah. So you find those Facebook groups with people who are interested in something similar. Mm-hmm. And then you use that to find the WhatsApp groups. Mm-hmm. And then you reach out to the WhatsApp group, say, I want to put this thing together. I want to start a game. Mm-hmm. And then you create a meetup, you create a web page or like a meetup page or something.
We didn't even do that. It was just WhatsApp initially. Like, we've got a meetup now. Meetup's good for that stuff. Instagram's good for that stuff. It was Facebook because there was already a Facebook group that people were using for this stuff. I think Facebook's kind of dead for a lot of things now, but this particular group was fairly active because there was a lot of foreigners, and that's what they gravitated towards. But I wouldn't even say, hey, I'm looking at getting a group together. I'd say, I have a group. We're playing on Saturday at this time in this place. Do you want to come or not? Because it's so much easier to agree to just show up to something that's already existing than like, yeah, I might be interested, but depends when it is and depends where you're playing, and let me know if you're going to do it. Just the thing's already happening, you're in or you're out, and it's so much. It's a yes or no question. It's much easier to say yes to that. So the follow-up bit of advice to that is when you're in, this applies to business too, is just make it as easy as possible for someone to say yes. So then like, okay, you've got one person who said yes, and they're expecting there to be 15 people there. You've got to hustle and find the other 14 before Saturday. But if it was easy, someone else would have done it by now. So smoke and mirrors.
Nice. I like that. Guerrilla marketing. Yeah. Wow. This has been amazing. So I want to ask one last question. And it's who should I interview next? Nate told me I have to ask this question at the end of every.
The person who springs to mind would be Belle. So she's ex-girlfriend, the girl I spoke about. She runs her own business now called goddess.com. I think it's GOHDD. She would be really interesting for you to talk to because, I don't know if you do like part 1, part 2, but it would probably be interesting to hear her side of the story with all that stuff as well, because she's been on the opposite end of that. And it might be helpful to get like the female perspective on a lot of the stuff that I spoke about as well. But she is interesting in that she probably would have been fairly happy not being an entrepreneur. She might have been a consultant or something eventually. But when she and I met, I was kind of the impetus to kind of put her on that path to entrepreneurship, and she's kicking butt right now. She's doing really well. So, completely different product industry to what I'm in. But really interesting. So I think, and she's fun too. So I'm sure you'd have a great conversation with her, and I think she'd give you some interesting insights and perspective. She's been on a bunch of other podcasts as well. So if you want to check those out first before you talk to her, but certainly I can hook you up with an intro if you'd like. She's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please do. Let's do that. Well, Ryan, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I've heard from you a lot of stuff that I've never heard before, never thought about before, and I'm going to put it into the mix, and I'm going to use a bunch of this stuff in my own life. I'm sure that people listening as well are going to be fascinated by learning not only about your story with your business, but also, what it's like, in your world as an entrepreneur, and then all these different challenges that you've overcome, all the wonderful strategies and tactics, as well as the stories you've shared. So thank you so much, Ryan. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right. Well, take care, Ryan.
Cool.
Until next time.
No worries. Thanks, Michael. See you, buddy. Bye.
Ciao.